What up, fam? Welcome to D-SANE8's Oakcliff Beach number 19. First off, give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter at D-SANE8, D-SANE8, and IZZ Rodeo. Today's guest is a rad new amiga going by the title Summer Baby 91 or Local Neighborhood Baby. I didn't get her government name, but she is the host of a podcast named Stressed, Depressed, and Anxious. You can find her content on Anchor, Spotify, and other platforms. Today's hangout covers numerous topics that led up to the rules that would govern Summer Baby's very own society. In her world, I don't think most people would survive. She believes in a zero tolerant, eye for an eye, and maybe even your brother's eye society. Tune into this radical episode from the Zuzu Rodeo Variety Stream.
Oh, that is trippy.
Yeah, that's that's the part that always gets everyone. Sometimes I like to have it already set up prior to. That way, it's just now you don't have to deal with the whole being recorded. I don't know, it's something weird about being recorded.
No, I like that. I actually like that. I like the announcement part of it. Get your blood pressure up. I
Well, no,
don't know.
that makes me think about when cell phones used to have it where if you took pictures of someone, you could hear the click, and they
Yeah.
started to phase that out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think they should bring that back. I think people should know when other people are being creeps.
What about the guy that's sitting across like a street and he's reading a newspaper and you're trying to capture? I don't know what kind of art style that is when you're taking a photo of someone across the street. You know what I'm
Still
talking
life.
about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, I think it'd be weird well, yeah, of course it's weird, but if you're taking a picture of somebody and they hear that shutter, it's gonna come run at you and jab at you. Hey, man, I want that picture. You can't get away with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, let's get really New York, New Jersey in here. Let's everywhere we go, make it known that you're taking someone's picture and then let them get insane and you can take action shots as they're coming toward you. You can have a richer story.
That just sounds like lawsuits ready to happen. You didn't ask my permission, so now I'm about to. Yeah, that just sounds like lawsuits ready to happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, with all the covert ways that people can take pictures of you nowadays, who knows? We probably all have pictures of us doing weird shit on the internet that we don't even know about. That's creepy.
Actually, that's part of the reason why I do my profile picture the way that I do. The one that I have on there is me. I was just in a pool and the water covered my face so you couldn't make it out because there is a site where they collect all of our photos and they just store the data up so they can also sell it back to people that want to use the excuse me, facial recognition
Recognition. Yeah.
program. And I don't know, it's something about that it just makes me I'm kind of creeped out about it, man. It bothers
Yeah,
me.
I mean it's all over for us, honestly. I think like with iPhone's integrations with Face ID, and then now you have Snapchat with all of the face scanning, and there's so many different things that use face scanning nowadays that like I think the cat is out of the bag. Like I think most people have their faces already, in the database. So it's just kind of insane. But I work for a tech company. I find those things kind of interesting, and it's always cool to see how much good you can do with that kind of information, and as like how much bad you can also do with that information. It just
Yeah,
depends on whose hands it's in. It's really interesting.
it's as always, everything has its good and its bad. I definitely know where it comes in, well, I can understand where it works and where it just feels like that creep that's stalking you. Because I saw a meme. It's like some of the things you do when you're in a relationship with somebody. It's really creepy if it's with somebody you don't actually care or know or trust.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like a lot of people nowadays have trust issues in the first place, and this just exacerbates it. Like all of the technology that we have, everything's a meme now, so you can become a meme at any point. It's just crazy.
That's why you have to be on top of the game, and you got to make your memes prior to. I
Yeah.
do that. I send my photos to a good friend of mine. And he just sits there and redoes them. It's this horrible photo. I hated myself because my face is like greasy. It looks like I'm selling fried chicken, and he just keeps populating it everywhere. So I'm just like, whatever, forget it. I don't care anymore.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, you know what? 2020 is an interesting year, and I think like if you're gonna make yourself a meme or do something crazy, I think this is the time to do it because nobody's even gonna realize it. I mean, there's
Yeah.
too much crazy shit going on, you know, that it'll just be a part of the collection of the craziness. It's wild.
Well, it's funny because I tell the people this a lot. Memes, I feel like memes are the new, well, yeah, they're the culture, and it's kind of a way to get news. Prior to all the crap happening with COVID, I found out about that, and it was something about Trump being or bringing us into a world war. I found all that out because of a meme. It was someone was joking about it and making memes at like 1 in the morning. I was like, wait, what's going on? And next thing I know, I see that, and then something about a bat, and I'm like, oh crap! I now know about COVID in the end of December prior to everybody else because of a meme. So I like to joke around
That's
and say I
so
get my meme news from the memes.
that is so funny because I honestly, as you were talking, I was trying to remember, when I really learned about COVID, and I can't even really recall. It probably was, like you said, somewhere on the internet, in this weird way. But I love that you're more focused on like news and getting the news from the memes. I'm like I'm looking at entertainment news. I mean, I found out about the Chris Evans situation from a meme.
Yeah.
Literally, I was like, whoa, like this is insane. And it would normally be top news, but it's definitely not because it's 2020. I mean, crazy shit happens all the time.
Well, I'm new to Twitter. I don't really, I don't really f with Twitter because well, personally, I don't f with social media in general. I just made my return to it probably, yeah, this year. I made my return to it this year because I deleted everything back in 2017, and then I turned the page on and hopped right off of it in 2019, and then it's funny to see all these things because I hopped on Reddit, and Reddit is a place of so much learning and
Yeah.
so much other, and then it made it easier to return to things like Twitter, because Twitter in some form or fashion, it feels like Reddit but with your actual picture. It kind of feels that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I could
And
see that.
the trending, it amazes me how fast things populate there, because I was just on for a brief moment, and then I saw the news about Chadwick Boseman, and
Oh man.
I
Oh,
was I was just
that
it
hit
was just like
hard.
yeah, it hit really hard because it's kind of one of those ones where you go, what? Like, every time there's a passing in life, or if it's someone, because one that hit me hard originally was Robin Williams, because it was
Oh yeah.
somebody that I knew, I liked I love their content. They always seem like a really bright character, but you don't know what they're struggling with. And it's one of those things when someone, it's weird. I guess I'm finally understanding like the things my parents would go through when they would just drop a random name, like, oh no, they passed. And as a kid, I would go,
Yeah,
okay,
whatever. Who's that?
yeah, yeah. And I finally get it. I finally get it because I mean, dang, it's a lot to come with that. Not even just to mention the way that he went forth with his sickness and didn't say anything. Like, God, that just made me want to be so much more awesome after all of that.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, in the case of Robin Williams, I think it was a little different. I feel like for me, it's like, yeah, you grew up with him and he's like in your living room and like in your mind in a way that you don't even really perceive until you hear the news that he's gone. But it's so funny because I think that he actually Robin Williams and a lot of other people that are still alive, talk about what they're going through so much, but it's just not. I maybe I don't know. I just don't think that people listen to it or want to hear it. I think when you are listening to somebody and they're sad and whatever, you kind of just, do that thing of like reminding them, like, hey, it's going to be okay or whatever. And you kind of gloss over it because it's way more interesting to listen to him be like super comedic and funny. But
Yeah.
the entire span of his career, he was very open about the fact that he was depressed and like super unhappy and had gone through so much. But it just wasn't the highlight. It wasn't what people wanted to hear. And it just kind of was like white noise
Yeah.
until he killed himself, unfortunately. And Chadwick, like you said, that was crazy because the strength of that guy, I can't even believe it, to have been going through all of that, not said a word about his sickness. Actually, towards the end, I was reading that like he was getting ridiculed online for being so skinny and all these things, and people were accusing him of like drug use, and they
Yep.
had no idea that he was like at death's door. And it was just crazy. That whole thing was like crazy.
Because the internet is savage. No one cares about their internet self or what they do on the internet.
Yeah, the anonymity allows you to be free, and it's again one of those things where it's like a good thing and a bad thing. Yes,
Yeah.
you can go on there and express yourself as much as you want, but also you can also do a lot of damage. I don't think Chadwick was a person that, probably, I hope not that he even took any it took in anything that, people were saying negatively, because I don't
Hmm.
feel like he's a type. He just seemed like a person who was really well grounded and like above
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So
He's
I hope
he's
that,
he's a
like,
way to he's definitely a lesson because I'm just seeing how he moved, seeing his character, watching everything he did in his interactions with his fellow people. I could just see him going, I don't care about that because I understand the bigger picture. He understood the frame that he was working within. It just, yeah, and I don't know. It's something about that it reminds me because there are moments where I don't know, maybe I become unbalanced and I start going like, maybe I should reply to that. Or just the insecurity, your insecurity start bubbling up and you start reacting in ways that you probably could handle better. And it's just, I moments like that, people like Chad, it definitely it lets you look at yourself and go, how can I be better? And I like that. I really like that when we have little moments like that in life.
absolutely. I think, that's part of being a human being, and growing as a human being is to try to think of how to make yourself better. And I always look, I think mostly, I know most people look every new year. I think I look more introspectively every birthday that I have. And I kind of think, how if I've, grown from who I was in the last year or not, and what I want to change. I think people should definitely self-reflect. And yeah, you're right. Chadwick is one of those people that make you really think about, you saying you can't do this and you can't handle this, and it's like the slightest thing will set you off or like make you give up. And here's a person that is such a true shining example of like, pretty much holding it down until the end, and
Yeah.
going and doing every single thing that he could possibly do. And it was actually crazy. The most emotional moment for me was watching a video of this whole journey with Denzel. When did you hear about that?
Yeah, that was crazy just to see Denzel. Him playing a part in his life is giving him the start of
Yeah.
paying for that, and it's it's another reminder. This world is small, even though it's so big. Like
Right?
you're
That's
connected to
crazy.
people. You are connected to people. I didn't understand how in depth his connection with Shuri was off the set. It was something. I don't know if you've listened to her not monologue. What is that? What do you call that when you say when you give your
A eulogy?
there we go. She gave a eulogy and it was really touching because like she didn't even know that he was going through it, and the way that he presented himself to her as hey, when they got on the set, I think his initial thing he told her was, you are my sister, love me that way. And that was the start of their relationship, and instantly just the connection was they are siblings, and that's how they carried themselves going further. It was real off the set and off on the set, like that's
That's
beautiful.
awesome. That's
And it just
awesome.
to feel her pain, which it just dang, I don't want to cry. Like I don't cry. No, nope, nope, not doing
Yeah.
that. But it's one of those. It's touching. It really I really felt that. I really felt that, and yeah, man, I really felt that.
Yeah, we've had some tough we've had some tough passings. I mean, even with the whole Kobe Bryant thing, that was like insane, so unexpected, and so sudden. And I feel like we've had, some of these sudden losses that has really taken a toll. And I was thinking to somebody the other day, a lot of people are worried about like their health and all this stuff, and people are worried about money after all of this stuff from, after 2020, taxes being higher, and people
Yeah,
have lost their businesses and all these things. And I'm like, the mental health after this is going to be crazy. I think this year, is that's the underlying thing, is that, so many people have lost their lives, and so many people have had to bury people as a result of like the diseases and things. And they haven't, I have a particular friend whose dad like got COVID and passed away in the span of a week. Got it, passed
dang,
away, and went into the hospital. That was the last time they saw him, just going into the hospital. Never see him again. This was like earlier in the earlier stages of COVID, and no funeral, nothing. You know what I mean? And to not get that kind of closure and have a year like this, I think like so many people have suffered. And I think afterwards it's going to be a lot of mental health, um residual effects. And even people spending so much time alone in quarantine, I think that's also, can have some negative mental health effects. So it's going to be not interesting, but it's going to be something to see, after this year's over.
I wonder with that because one of the things I always joke around with people is, hey man, someone needs to drop some therapy coupons because therapy costs a lot, but seeing this up, there's gonna be a huge population and people that need it. It would be nice if, I don't know, therapy would cost less. So people could be, so they can know that it's an actual valid option. I remember there was this one gentleman who offered, if I'm not mistaken, I really wish I remember the details, but there was an artist and he wanted to take his money to basically offer free therapy for black men under the between the ages of, I believe it was either 16 to 23. And for me, I heard that and I started thinking about myself and I'm going, but I'm 27 and I need that too.
Yeah, we
and
we all need it.
and it's just I that's why I've also turned to, I felt like it's kind of a, I love that everyone's getting this podcast bug because it helps us connect. It helps this what we're doing. I feel like this is a some form of therapy, especially if you're trying to put good hearts together and that actually want to try and just express themselves. I don't know. This is a form of therapy, and that's how I've started to look at it, and I like it. I really hope that's what happens from all of this, is that we grow closer and that sense of community pops back up. That genuine community becomes something that's more, and not just the, because I know the dark side to podcasting. A lot of people see it as, all right, well, this is another way for me to just be a part of ad revenue, and yeah, it's I understand that, but that's why there's a gentleman I follow on Twitter named Roosterbat, and just following him, he's taught me so much, just the whole humanness of all of this, just being genuine, being yourself. It's really good feeling because you meet friends, you meet people all over the place. It's great. I really enjoy it.
Oh yeah, I think, I have a job, and I wouldn't want to get an additional one. That something Doing something like a podcast, I think, is a form of creative expression. And I
Hmm.
think to focus on it on a business standpoint and make that the main focus would be so exhausting and so draining, and just another thing that would feel like more of a chore than it would
Yep.
be, like you said, therapeutic. I love it because, like you said, I mean, it's totally therapeutic, and but I didn't even consider monetizing my podcast, actually, when I first started, and I just, kind of ran with it. and just did it as a form of just to express myself. And I had like a couple listeners, like maybe like 10 listeners or so. And I just kept going with it because it was this thing that was like no pressure. I got to just
Yep.
come on, be myself, talk about whatever, and that was it. And there was nothing, more to it. And it was so nice. And it's still nice because even now, that I've grown with it, and I'm like, okay, maybe I do want to consider having some ad revenue or connecting with more people. The main focus is not to make money off of it. The main focus for me is just to enjoy it and
Yep.
to connect, like you said. And it's so nice. It's so therapeutic. I think whenever you can talk to people about and actually just be yourself in the process is like wonderful. Which makes me realize how much time we spend during the day and in our lives actually not being ourselves. Like work.
I hate that. So
Yeah.
you're at work and because I know me at work, there's this thing I call the hyperdrive, and when you're at work, it's like your desire to seek for perfection and just constantly just get things right. And when I'm at work, that's what I'm at. That's what I'm doing. Because I do research because I'm a land title examiner, and and being there, pretty much I'm finding out stuff about people and property, and I do that like for 8 hours. I do that. I figure out people's problems, and that's what I do all day. So I'm trying to get it done quick, and I'm trying to basically get it done quick and correct as best as I possibly can. I'm trying to be as efficient as I possibly can. And when you do that, as soon as you get off, when I come home, if I have a show that evening, I need to decompress for about an hour or maybe an hour and a half, because I've did like there was a show I was getting ready to do one time, and I was hopping on from work and immediately to a show, and I could feel it in me. It was just that high paced energy, wanted to just it's just like a jittery feeling. You're just asking people questions, and you're still
Yeah.
in that mode, and I don't like it because it's weird. And I had to learn that early on. I had to learn that you need to be able to chill. You need to be able to just sit down and fucking chill.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you and completely understand. All I do all day, I work at a tech company. We're building apps for people, we're building websites for people. Everything has a deadline, everything is crunch time, everything is an emergency all the time, 24/7.
Right?
And and so my mind is just racing and racing and racing. And yeah, I mean, I could never do a show without decompressing because I feel like, yeah, I wouldn't be myself at all. I think that's a whole different persona. It's a whole different uh thing that I'm accessing to get those types of jobs done. And it's not exactly who I am. I mean, I don't think it's anywhere near who I am. So you're absolutely right. And it's funny, spending 8 hours a day doing that, uh man, when you really put it in context, it's like I don't know how any of us do it, but we managed to
Because
get
we're
it
all idiots and we allowed them to do that to us.
exactly. We've allowed them to do it to us and convince us. I read something once about capitalism and how, oh, your value isn't placed on, or your value shouldn't be placed on like how I guess your ability to like do work or whatever, how well you can do work and all this stuff. And it was so funny because I don't remember it exactly, but when I read it, I felt like, man, you're kind of calling me out because I know how often you're proud of like your accomplishments at work and all this stuff. And not that that's wrong, but there's so much to it. That's like what people ask you for. That's how people determine your success rate, your success level in life and all this stuff. And it's like, really? Because I'm slaving away, like
Yep.
doing something
The
I don't
the
genuinely really care that much about. I mean, I don't know.
I don't, as I progress, because my brother, I have my capitalism tangents a lot. There are reasons why I haven't monetized the show yet. I make music, so sometimes I'm going, I don't want to sell someone a lease for a beat. I'd much rather just say, hey, let's just leave it at the royalties. It's weird. I have this mixed feeling about capitalism because I know I know what it is. I know it's taken from somebody else's ability to go buy something for their family. And I get it that it's the because I was having a conversation with one gentleman, and pretty much it's like the alternatives to capitalism, socialism, they say that doesn't work too. Capitalism is the best figure for freedom. I don't even know. I just
Yeah,
know
but
it's
I'm like, sometimes I'm like, how do they know? Because you really don't even
right,
want to try it.
right.
So let's just not jump to conclusions.
I, I I've played around with the thought that if you really have a problem with capitalism, the best thing you can do is just give back, and that's kind of that's what I'm gonna run with because I can't think of anything else. I just feel like the best answer to capitalism is giving back. So that's kind of how I want to look at it. I was being told earlier about a story where a guy, I forgot what he was making a really good deal of money from his company, something along the lines where he was pulling in millions, and they were in California, and um his people that worked under him weren't making enough to really provide for their families in their environment. I think they were doing like 35,000 a year, which is okay in Texas. Well, it's it's I don't know. It determines what you mean by okay, because you got a kid, everything is drastically different. But
Right.
in California, 35,000 isn't
It's
anything, especially with
absolutely
the living
nothing.
situation.
Yeah.
And he took a pay cut so he could then jump everybody that worked for him to about, I think it was 75,000 a year. And it's like, there we go, stuff like that. That is stuff you want to hear. That is stuff you want to hear from people that are supposedly making all this money because I there's just I don't know. There's something that tells me that when you make enough money, there should be a point where it's just like you've made too much money. But I also understand the concept of because in America we love to preach opportunity is the way. And if you have more money, they look at it as well, you have more money, so you now have more opportunity to give other people opportunities. It's just I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's one of those, another thing where it's just like, yes, there's pros and yes, there's cons, and there's, you can turn it into something negative or you can make it into something positive. I feel like, one of the main issues overall with capitalism is because the system is rigged, and I think that's a lot of people's problem with it in the first place, is that it's not really set up fairly. It's not really any man's game like they try to make it seem like it is. You know what I mean? There's all
Yeah,
these setups, like based on your demographics, based on your race, based on your gender, based on everything. Here's your starting point, go. And some people are way behind and some people are way ahead, and it's a really unfair game most of the time. And then the people who are happening, a lot of them that are in the 1% bracket, they're selfish, they're greedy, and they want it all for themselves, and they're willing to cheat people, they're willing to do disgusting things to even make more money for no reason. When you think about the food industry in particular, comes to mind, like what they're willing to do, and like the fast food industry, what they're willing to do and compromise just with human health, and like not giving a shit about people, just to, and they already make billions, so it's like complete like greed and treachery on the highest scale, in my opinion. It's insane. So I think that's really the main problem with it. It's just like the system is very rigged, and the ones that happen to be on the top, the vast majority of them are very disgusting people. And they usually, I mean, because you have that amount of wealth, stays in your family, and your
oh yeah.
family just is kind of this in the same line, of people.
That's a
So
whole other conversation. Just
yeah.
what they say, the old money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But on the bright side, it's cool to see the information age, the technology age come through, because now we have things like YouTube, and we have things like podcasts, and we have all these creative endeavors that,
Yeah,
people are kind of still clowning, but it's funny because people are making millions of dollars from it. And these are all like creative expressions. And I think that's awesome, because that to me, I feel like, those are the kind of things where like people can go on and do something that's really about themselves and be themselves while they're doing it. I think that's awesome.
yeah. It's. I was playing around with the idea earlier. We need this because when you are only thinking about something logically, you kind of shut out your imagination, which imagination, as chaotic as it is it allows for you to create another pathway to answer a question that you thought was impossible yesterday. Uh, the and all of this, like just podcasting, it may be chaotic as hell, but who knows what connection gets made? Who knows what gets built from when those two random things come together and reenact the Big Bang? Who knows when you create that new Goldilocks zones for something else and innovate something else for something else? I know that's just a random tangent, but it's just that's the reality that this
No, it's
is.
absolutely true. It's just like the Denzel Chadwick situation. It's like,
Yep.
who knows what you do? You just happen to give some money haphazardly. He wasn't even the one organizing it. He said Kerry Washington was like, told him about this thing where they're giving money to kids that are in school and they can't really afford their tuition. And he just hands over this money, doesn't really, know too much about it. And years later, we find out this guy goes on to become Black Panther, so influential, and has changed the lives of so many people and has had this huge impact on the world. And even if it's, because people always think like, oh, maybe just my podcast is like whatever, it's not it's not doing anything on that scale, but you never know. Listening to things, when I have bad days, people think like, for example, like the entertainment industry, who gives a shit about that? Like it's trash. We have reality TV. It's a lot of times trashy, whatever. But there's value to it in the sense that, when you come home from your 8-hour workday and being like a mental slave to whatever it is that you're doing, and you can decompress with all these different forms of entertainment and laugh and kind of get, like forget about your problems and things like that. I feel like there's like a major value in that. I think that keeps people alive, actually, and
Yeah.
does more than people can actually even imagine. So you're absolutely right.
What always widens my horizon, or it just changes my perspective got changed on a lot of things when I was watching the news and there was someone talking about just how important art was, and them going out and doing little quartets and people gathering and just getting kind of hyped up about people out there just making music amongst these times. And because I do art, I do music, and I do rap and stuff, and it's like I do it because I like doing it. But to see these people going out and just feeling with joy from watching people just play some tunes in a square of a city, it helps them. It really keeps people going. And I like you were saying, like I really, this is an essential part of the human, whatever the hell we are, the consciousness. I hear people say human consciousness, but it's a major component. And I understand it a little bit more just from watching this. We need this. We need that sunlight. We need that person that's just gonna go randomly dance in some water. Like it's a big deal. We need
It's
that
a
shit.
huge deal. It's a huge deal. It's so funny when you're talking about that quartet. It makes me it makes me think of the movie Titanic. With those guys that the ship is sinking and they're playing their, violins and things. And it's so funny because, it kind of reminds me of this shit year. It's like this 2020 and all this stuff is going on, but we still have podcasts, we still have TikTok, we still have YouTube, and we're still, able
Wait, do
to
we
look
still
at
have
those things.
TikTok?
We still have TikTok.
I thought that
Believe
was
it or
getting
not.
banned this morning.
There's a lot of things that are like insane, right? Yeah, we still have all those things. It's really funny, I kind of feel like it's kind of like being on the Titanic, the ship is sinking, but at least you can listen to this beautiful music and you can kind of distract yourself. Because if you have to pay attention to the fact that the ship is sinking, it's really not going to make a difference other than you screaming at the top of your lungs and you're going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Go out pleasantly. If you can pick that option, why
exactly,
not, right?
exactly,
I like that perspective. um,
it helped me to remember though that people lived through a lot of things, like thinking about the Great Depression era, thinking about Hitler's reign of terror, thinking about all those things, and to see those things are kind of comforting to me in a sense that, like, as terrible as times are, they've been terrible before and they've been a lot worse than this before. And as horrific as it is, it still happened, and it people got through it. The world didn't actually end. So sometimes that's comforting too, to think about how much, actually has happened in the world and how crazy people have actually gotten, and the fact that it's still here, you
Yep.
know, is
I
interesting.
believe that the people will still continue regardless. My grandma used to play around, well, not to play around. I would always tell her about space and say, "Hey, what about us moving to Mars?" And she would always say something along the lines of, "We weren't meant to go anywhere else. We're supposed to be here." But I think about the human race and how much we want to continue and we keep striving. We're gonna, I'm pretty sure we'll end up on Mars. We'll have a population there. When the sun keeps growing and it decides to eat Earth, we'll be on a moon on Jupiter or one of those. And then we'll just keep going. It'll just constantly be us like, okay, what's next, guys?
It's so funny because I feel like when people think of the world ending, they typically think of like the world actually like evaporating or something, disappearing in some form. I always think of the world ending as like it becoming uninhabitable for humans, because I think
Mm,
that's what it's all headed towards in terms of what human beings are actually doing. All the pollution, all that stuff that they keep talking about, global warming, everything that we're doing, the destruction to the planet, it's not really going to like make the planet like evaporate and melt away. What it's just going to do is kill us all, and we're not going to be able to live on the planet. But that doesn't mean it won't still be there. It's just we can't live on it. So it's really funny because I feel like if more people think about it that way, they may have a different attitude towards actually taking care of it, versus like the, oh well, fuck it all, like the world's going to like explode, you know anyway at some point. It's like, no, you're just not going to be able to live here. That's just going to be that. And who knows, just getting like really carried away with my imagination, who knows, maybe that's what happened with all the other planets. Maybe the reason why we can't live there is
yeah,
because
actually, no, that's a. They were talking about that. They were going, "What if we already fucked up Mars and we just came here?" No, yeah, someone was saying that the asteroid that came was really our spaceship, and they came on Earth, blew up Earth, killed the dinosaurs, and then we started anew. That's what it was. That's what all of that
yeah, and
was.
it's all just history repeating itself. This is our last chance.
Yep, yep. Although they have said something about Venus possibly having life on, yeah, possibly having life on Venus. So maybe that's it. We're just trying to get closer to the sun. So our next shot is like, all right, well maybe we'll go check out
I
Venus,
hope
as
not. I
acidic
hope
as it
not.
is.
I think if we
Yeah,
ruin it here, we don't deserve Venus, honestly.
yeah. Well, yeah. There's that famous line that it was it Neil deGrasse Tyson or one of them. Somebody said if you can go to freaking Mars and do the greenhouse effect there and make that place livable, then you can start here and do that shit here with people
Yeah.
already on it. We're in a closer shot to do it here than we are there. Although maybe that argument starts getting a little convoluted when you start thinking about there's a bunch of humans here and they always get in the way of the progress, and it's
Isn't
easier
that
to start
interesting?
somewhere.
It's so interesting because it's like it's always going to be one of those things where, okay, well, if that's really, let's just run with it. Like that's really where we were headed. Now who's making the decision of who's going and who's not? That's always the funny part. That's when it starts to get really chaotic. Oh yeah, we could live on Venus. Yeah, so who's allowed to get to this on this spaceship? Who's not allowed? Who's the first? Who's the last? You know what I mean? Like, is it going to be, how much money you have? We don't even have a money value system there yet. What's the whole setup and who's deciding it? That's the funny part. And that's always the same problem that we have, here. Same thing. So like, it's all about wanting power, and with that always comes mass chaos because, one person is never really meant to have power, full power. At least I think like you can have great leaders, but when it comes to power structure, it should never just be one power or one person that has all the power. I think, you know,
I
or
agree.
even,
Even if it's a
yeah.
just AI doing that, the AI isn't. I don't know. The AI will
Well, it's
think of something
who's
that could
making
end
it. No,
everybody.
it's who's making the AI. It's so funny. AI technology. We did a study on it actually, and it's interesting because it's biased based on who developed it. Do you know what I mean?
I
Um,
don't. Please go into that because
so
I know there's like self-thinking AI who, they come up with their own thought process in their algorithms on what they collect, and it's probably I wonder if that's what you're referencing, what they
yeah,
collect in their
so
algorithm. It's probably
Yeah.
what determines that bias.
Yeah, there's always biases in algorithms, and it's based on who's writing the algorithm. Because at the end of the day, it's always starting with a human being, or at least a group of human beings, and they are writing this algorithm. And people have unknown bias a lot of the time, and so even with these self-thinking AIs, we find bias over and over and over again. It crops up because people are the ones who are developing the algorithm. And it's so funny. There's been so many studies done just to prove like how much bias people actually have that they don't even know about. I remember watching a show that came out not too long ago. It's called 100 Humans, and it's on Netflix. And it's a really
Mm.
interesting show
I've
because
been meaning to watch that.
they do so many different experiments, with people, just kind of like seeing what happens, how people respond to different situations. And it was so funny. One of the ones that really stuck out to me actually was positive and negative feedback, and how it, like, if does it make the person better or worse. And it was crazy because just to watch, like, it was like this thing where, like, one group A comes up, and none of them know how to juggle, so they teach them how to juggle, and then they perform it, and the other group does the same thing. And one receives like positive encouragement, and one receives like, kind of more negative criticism, and whatever. And it was crazy, the difference to see, like, the people who received the negative criticism, how much worse they were when they came back, versus the people with like the positive kind of like encouragement coming back, and every single one of them did better than they did before. They didn't do like crazy better, but they did better than they did before. And the other people were just like, some of them were actually good to start off with, but they still like, oh well, you could improve, and then they came back and they did so much worse. So it was like insane. But they do all kinds of experiments like that. And what a lot of them revealed was that people they have their biases, that they're, based on all the things that you've heard, how you grew up, at all of your ideals that are like ingrained in you, your bias. And so anything that we develop naturally just becomes, kind of biased.
Tell me more about your, I guess, if what you can tell about what you design at work.
Well, I mean, everything that we do is completely custom. So we are building whatever, the client wants. If you want a website, we're building it. If you want an app, doesn't matter what industry or vertical it is in, we could build a game, we can build, like any sort of app that you can imagine, from the most basic to the most complicated. So there's really no cap on what we develop. I mostly deal with the apps, and also business type websites, like internal websites like CRMs and things like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's like a wide range of projects.
Would you say, I guess what I'm also trying to get to is, how do you guys try to conquer people creating biased algorithms when they're doing that? Because there seems to be no way to get up. It's a human thing. It's a human
Yeah,
thing.
it is. That's what I'm saying. It's a human thing. It's very, very hard. What we try to do is have a diverse set of developers. You don't have a team of just like one type of person when it comes to AI, but
Mm.
it's still it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Because the people that work best together are people that think alike anyway. So
Yep.
if you really think about it.
It's hilarious. Oh, you see, there's that, and there's also those, they're the good puzzle pieces. The opposite attracts, thing. I have a friend who's super structured, and for me, I fall a little bit on the lines of just every bit of chaos, and we work together because whatever I generate from that chaos can get refined and improved through that structure. It's like you need one and the other for the progress to
Yeah.
actually flow correctly.
Yeah, for developers, that's like the QA, right? So developers are like, yeah, I'm just gonna get this out, and I think it's perfect. I'm gonna put it out there. And then you have your quality assurance team that's now testing it against everything, testing to see if what happens when you get to 1 million people coming on your website. Is it gonna crash? Like those are kind of the two different groups I think that kind of work with and against each other in a way. But yeah, I mean, it's always, it's interesting, you know. Yeah, you're right. There are certain situations, and a lot, there's even on a human relationship level where not complete opposites, I don't think,
Yeah.
but people complement each other in different ways. That's absolutely true. But they still have common ground. When you start, I mean, I've never seen two people together that had zero common ground. I don't think it works ever, you know? So you have to have some common ground there, you know, and then hopefully complement each other in different ways. Those are the best relationships, no matter on what level, because you make each other better if you complement each other.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah.
The activation energy for that is lowered. It's going to be hard to get a conversation started between I'm just throwing it out there, maybe a Nazi and a Jew. You're not going to get that. That's not going to go anywhere.
Oh, I think it is going to go somewhere. Not
Oh,
somewhere
well,
good,
yeah.
but
I don't know if the desire to reach something positive is going to be the first step.
I think
The
so. You know what? Actually, you know what? I think that people on that level, I'll say, on that level of hatred is a
hmm
different thing, because I think hatred is so close to things like love and things like really jealousy, because I feel like the most hate that people feel towards you is kind of like when you have things about you that's like they're envious of and they're afraid of and they want and they can't get it and they hate it about you, and that's like the most passionate hatred that you can have. And so I think even those two people that kind of seem opposite are not really opposite. It's more so almost complimenting in a way, in a tiny way, because it's like here you have the Nazi that's so enraged and so jealous, and Jews shouldn't get everything and they own all this stuff and it's not fair and I want their stuff and I don't think they should have all this stuff. And it comes from a place of envy, and it comes from a place of like, you know, I don't want you to be better than me. And I think those two people can actually find common ground because you already like me and that's why you hate me. You know what I mean? In a way. Um,
I, I can see
all
in a
those
way,
types of
but
people.
I
Yeah,
also
in a way.
start thinking about well the other reasons for World War II. It was, hey, let's find someone to blame World War on. Oh yeah, world that's a tongue twister. I didn't know that. World War I on, and that's the other thing I was thinking about with is they pretty much just said the Jews, we're gonna pin that on them, and we're gonna build our new society on the backs of them. And I start thinking about that. That's why I also go, yeah, maybe there is something about they had a bunch of stuff in their own communities, but I remember from at least what I was taught when I was younger, it was built because it was built on their backs because they wanted to find someone to blame why the Germany failed.
Well, yeah, that too. And I also think the interesting part, again, to me, is that in order for you to build something on a specific community's back, you have to think of that community as having some sort of strength, right? Otherwise, it won't hold up. Because in order for you to make a slave out of somebody, they have to have all these different types of strengths. They have to be able to withstand all these things that you're going to do to
Mm,
them. And, you know, they have to be some level of very useful to you. And so that's why I always think of the people that are kind of the most oppressed are actually the biggest threat, because that's why they're being oppressed in a way. You know what I mean?
I,
And that's why it's worth trying to put all that energy into just kind of stamping them down until, you know, you kind of destroy any urge that they'd have to resist you, because they're very threatening. I don't know, that's just my take on it, but I really do truly think that like a lot of it has to do with like envying a specific group of people and like wanting what they have for yourself.
I can relate to that perspective. I definitely understand that perspective, and I was trying not to go on a tangent and prevent from saying, are you familiar with Full Metal Alchemist, the anime?
No, I'm not, but I do love anime.
There's a people that, and I guess this is also a spoiler just in case you ever watch it, but the main protagonist in the story, the I guess I'm butchering this, but the army that he's with, they in the war they were fighting these people, the Ishbalan people, and the Ishbalan people were really strong, or it was something there was something they needed from them. And if I'm not mistaken, what ended up happening, they used those people to create something they wanted. And and it's kind of the same thing. I don't know if it was just because there were so many of them, or if it was they were just a stronger people, and they made, because I'm trying. It's kind of hard to explain it if you don't have the context, because then it just goes into like, here's how the Full Metal Alchemist world works. But the point is, I get it. I get where you're coming from, because yeah, it makes sense. That is a way to look at it. I've heard that discussion before about how hate is really just love and jealousy fused together. It
Yeah.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely. I mean, because for you to like, I've had people in my life that I don't really care for and I don't really like, and I feel like I couldn't even like summon up the energy to like give that any kind of time of day, because I'm really more so indifferent about it. It's like, I don't prefer your company, whatever. It's not this big thing. The passion that you feel when you hate someone, like really intensely hate someone and like want to cause them harm and want to like really, stamp them out and whatever, that passion requires for you to like have some sort of almost in a way love, right?
Mhm.
Because there's no way. I mean, you can't even dedicate that amount of energy to something that you don't care about. You can only pour that amount of passion and energy to something that you intensely care about. And in order for you to, really decode that and like, why do I care about this so much? It's always fused with like, I'm jealous, I'm envious of these people. I'm so, if you really look at it, like
Some form of infatuation. Yeah,
yeah,
there's something there. I don't, because love is this weird thing. I don't know if it's
it's
love
so weird.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's it's just, I know from my experience. I remember where there was a time where there was a hate I had for an individual. I remember what it was tied to. It was because there was a jealousy. There was time that was connected to someone else that they were stealing from me, or at least that's what it felt like. That's exactly what it felt like, and I know the other thing was, I know that you caused me pain, so I want to cause you pain. I don't know what that is. If that, I feel like that's more on the revenge thing.
Even
But
that takes so much energy. It takes so much.
it
You have to
does.
care. You care so much. You just care
Yeah,
so much,
you
you
care
know?
so much, and when you got to start, I guess you got to start pinning down on what makes you care about something.
Exactly.
And if you care about something, it's because there is some form of infatuation,
Yeah.
and
It
I guess
started
that's
out that way in the first place. You know what I mean? And it went to this dark place because you actually can't get what you want from the situation. So you become like so like passionately enraged and like, then you just let it fuel you, and now you hate so much. It's like an insane system, but it's funny. And I think people, should, if people were more introspective, especially people who hate other people, I think they would find the same thing. Like, why do I even give a damn? You know what I mean? I can actually exist and like completely ignore this person. Like,
yeah.
just keep going on. But like, no, I'm choosing to pour my passionate, intense hatred, and like quest for revenge and all this stuff. And it's like, man, you know. So I think that's really funny. I think that's really funny. But and love on the opposite end, I think that's just a completely strange, weird thing. That really can't even be put into words.
Well,
Almost in a
well,
way.
if you had to try, what would you say love is? And I'm not gonna fall for the it's just a chemical
No, no, no.
thing in
I'm
your
not
brain.
that kind of person. No. Well, what I'll get into is what kind of love, right? Because there's different kinds of love, right? There's like
This is true.
your familial love, the love you feel for a friend is different from the love that you feel romantically. There's all these different levels of love. So what kind of love are we talking about here?
Well, it's weird because when I think about that, there's also that type of love. That's what they used to call it, agape love. That love where it's just in its purest form.
Okay, so
It's
you're
that
really
care.
familiar. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that kind of love, I think, is like the real true love in my book. I think that's the love that you can actually feel for anyone, because you want so much to see that person, like you want all. It's like the opposite of hate. You want all great things for this person. I mean, it doesn't even matter about you. Self is kind of taken out of the equation. It's completely selfless. It's completely like I want, you know, you to have the best that life has to offer. And even beyond that, I'm going to root for you and cheer for you. I'm going to be there to support you. It doesn't matter if it has anything to do with me or not.
Exactly.
Because that's what really separates from all the other kinds of love. It's like, it's very selfless, completely selfless. And it's kind of almost like giving yourself up. I think that's probably the way that I would describe love in general. Like, you know, in a weird way, you have to kind of give yourself up. I think that's why people call it too, like falling in love and things like that. It's very much a form of like surrender in a
Yeah.
way, like
You make
completely
yourself vulnerable.
surrendering, which is, it's so, that's what makes it so scary. It's like I'm completely giving myself up to you. And I think that's like, yeah, that's pretty scary.
It can be. It because you don't know the intention. You don't know this person's if
You'll
they're
never know.
balanced out to the point or if it comes. Yeah, you never know. But that's why you make yourself vulnerable because you you want to. I don't know why the human wants to do it so much.
Because it's so like, it's an insane thing when you take that giant trust fall, I guess, from like this huge height, and the other person actually catches you or and reciprocates that. I think when it goes two ways, it's like this insanely amazing euphoric thing, and it's so beautiful, but it rarely happens. It's so rare. It rarely happens like where it's like both ways, you know, or even one way. But it's very rare that, you know, two people can actually feel those same feelings for each other at the same time in the
And
same place and
blend.
have it be right. And it's, yeah, that's why it's so like, but it's so amazing that people are willing to roll the dice. Um, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy because there's that saying, it's better to love than to never. Because either way, you'll regret. So it's always better to. Oh, I don't know. How do you feel about that? Is it
I
always
don't
better to
feel that way.
experience it?
No way, man. I don't know.
So you would you rather go amongst this whole thing never having to experience it?
I mean, look, if the scenario is that would I rather never experience it or experience it and like be hurt by it? Absolutely. I'll go through my mediocre life like, you know, every Joe Schmo, and okay, it's fine. I don't need to feel horrendous, you know, for years and like die that way. That's absolutely the worst. I think people underestimate the damage that love can do when it's not reciprocated or where people take advantage of it and they hurt you with it and they twist it. I think that is really like, and as amazing and euphoric as love actually is, I think that's like such a terrible thing, and it turns people into shells of themselves. It makes people hate. It makes people, you know, go down these really dark paths, and it's not something to be taken lightly. I think that pain is really like the worst. So yeah, I would rather have my mediocre life and not have to feel it if the alternative is to kind of feel it and then suffer through it. I think that's terrible. That's horrible. That's like the worst. That's like hell.
Well,
So,
it's funny because from my experience, I always think of it as like that suffering can also be the thing that's needed to make you better. Because for me, if I didn't go down whatever dark path I went down and fall off whatever high horse I needed to fall off of, it wouldn't have helped me become who I am today. And
yeah,
it
but is that suffering just in general you're talking about, or suffering because of actual, real, serious love?
it's suffering. I'm talking about suffering from an actual real serious love. And I also feel that way about suffering in general. I know my brother always tells me if you can go throughout life without having suffering, why not? But I I don't I don't know where that stems from, or the idea of embracing suffering sometimes, because I know it's out there and it's more out there than anything else. And I look at it as conquering it, so that way if anything comes, you can take from it whatever betterment you can from it. I guess that's how I start to look at it, because I know it's looming. It's always out there. It's always out there.
No, I think suffering is, you're right. Suffering is always out there, but I think it's one, again, one of those things where you don't, because some people And it was funny because I remember like doing the whole zodiac thing and like reading my own birth chart, and it was funny because I completely relate to it, saying like I in perspective of like, you know, work, career, like life in general, I, like you said, view suffering as something like it's I believe that in order to get a good thing, there must be suffering involved. And so I don't really feel like it's that great of a thing if I haven't suffered for it. And I think that's sometimes ingrained in a lot of people, that they think like they have to suffer for things, right? And that's what makes it so great. But not really, not all the time. And it shouldn't be that way. I think when you do have to suffer, you come across suffering over the course of a natural human life. I think absolutely on the flip side, you should use it and to propel yourself to be better and kind of embrace it, to say, okay, I'm going to be better from the situation. I'm going to learn from it. However, I don't think every great achievement has to have suffering involved, because that's not the price you pay to achieve greatness. It's just something that happens. And I think, you know, when it happens, yeah, take the great good from it, become better, but don't chase after it, and don't, you know, don't think that it's something that you have to go through, because you don't have to suffer in life. That's nobody made that rule up. You don't have to suffer in life. If it happens, embrace it, be better. But if it doesn't happen too, that's fine. You don't have to suffer. And I
Yeah,
try to like
yes.
adapt that mentality too.
I,
Because,
I, it's a mentality that I try to make sure I'm not being toxic or having toxic masculinity, because after reading David Goggins' book on how he embraced suffering and he just looked to find the next thing that would basically make him harder, so he get basically earned the title of I'm the strongest motherfucker on the planet. And I think there's something also with it, because it might be my own little bias, but just that whole excuse me, there's that whole bias behind it of trying to oh, can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. I saw that the mic thing had disconnected. My bad. But um what was it? What was I thinking of? I lost my train of thought. Back to it.
The books,
Uh,
the guy with the strength, being the greatest person, being the
yeah,
strongest person.
he was always, he came from a standpoint where life was pretty bad, and he had to basically conquer suffering. And with that, he wanted to make sure he always conquered everything and made himself harder. And he sought out things to make himself harder. If he felt like he needed to be stronger, he sought out those things so he could become more. And I know he would always tell in his book how it's just a change of mindset. But I get it. You don't need to go sought out suffering. I think the lesson to be learned is to understand when you need to change your mindset so you can be better than whatever or wherever you are. I think that's the
Yeah,
important part of it.
because I think people do that almost as a defense mechanism, really, in a way. I think a lot of people have, you know, been raised in suffering. They've suffered a lot. And so in order to survive the suffering, if you just kind of let it, you know, run its course and stuff, like you'll probably become a lot weaker and, you know, more vulnerable. So instead, as a defense mechanism, you know, I think a lot of people who have suffered a lot in their lives become those sort of people almost as a defense mechanism, because now if I take it that way and like, okay, you know what, I have these bullies that are bullying me, and now I'm gonna bully everybody else, and I'll never be bullied again. It's almost that kind of thing to me, because, you know, now you're chasing after something to ensure yourself, to prove something to yourself, like you never want to be in that position again, but you're chasing after it all the time, and you're making your life about that. And I don't think that's healthy. I think, you know what? Yeah, I was bullied once before. I could talk about it, whatever it is, but and you know, I'm a better person because I know how to deal with it now. I can talk to other people about how to deal with it. But I don't make that my entire life. I don't have to be bullied all the time, or I don't have to bully other people all the time to conquer that, or to make sure it never happens again. You have no control over this life, you know, in a lot of ways. So take the lesson, learn from it, but don't make your life about it, is my stance on suffering. And I think that that mentality, I read somewhere, it's almost like in the black community, it's like more of like a slave mentality, I read,
Hmm.
because there's all that suffering, and then you're kind of raised with like, yeah, you have to work really, really, really hard to get the things that you want. You have to work harder than everybody else. And it's just this thing that's in your head that's like telling you like, I have to like suffer for everything that I want. In reality, it's not true. You don't have to suffer for everything that you want. You can get things without having to suffer. And I had to like overcome that thinking in myself, actually. Um, and I still have to like overcome that thinking all the time, because it's definitely there. It's definitely like, yeah, like,
I get I get it.
I have those thoughts. Yeah.
It parallels with my thought of paying for school. I know when I was always talking to, and not to switch the subject or anything, but it's like I understand it, and it's I'm showing how I understand it by switching to it this example. But it's I always talk to older people. There's a gentleman I talk to about this, couple guys I talk to that are over 50, and I talk about how if you don't have to pay for school anymore, it if you if think as I always tell them, take yourself, go back in time to when you paid for school. If you didn't have to pay for that school, why, like, wouldn't it be better for you if you still were able to take in and learn the stuff that you needed to learn? Wouldn't it be better for you if it didn't cost as much as it did? And I play around with that thought because I enjoy the idea of people not having to pay for school, or things being given to you more where you don't have to have a loan for all your life or something. I don't see a problem with that. I remember
People
there
are
was
not,
a
yeah, not looking at the big picture with when it comes to that. They're thinking about it as socialism, which again, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I think what it really is about is status, right? It's just
yeah.
status. What makes this thing valuable is that it costs more money, and so not everybody can access it. And the more accessible it is, the less valuable it is, so that people can't say like, "Oh, you're higher educated, so we're going to pay you all this money, and you're very special and important, and all these other people below you are not special and important, and we can treat them like crap and pay them crap, and that's about it." But if you make it things accessible to the masses, that's a game changer. Now we're not so special, we're not so important. It's not all about the people that have money or are a certain way. It's not all these tiny little groups of people like accepting, kids into these Ivy Leagues and these schools and deciding what percentage of each kind of person gets into these schools. We don't have that power there. Taking away all that power. And that's why people don't want those things. And honestly, to be honest, even the people who are not getting those things, like all the communities that are kind of suffering because they're not getting those things given to them, they don't even want that, because it's almost like saying, like, look, it's clout. It's like, I have an iPhone. If they tell me today that it's available for everybody, it's not as cool. I want to be able to work hard to get the iPhone so I can kind of, show it off.
Yeah.
And that's
It's that value. And
yeah.
that's what someone else was talking about. They were saying they're making you pay for it so you can understand values. That's the thought process behind it. And then it goes back to that's what supposedly suffering is. Is suffering is so you can understand the value of something. That nothing great comes without some form of suffering, supposedly, or the work that needs to be put in. However, as like you were saying, if you don't have to, why do it? If as a species, supposedly as we evolve, we're supposed to be doing away with things that cause us to suffer. So I would think, why don't we just do that? Get rid of that thing. That's one less thing.
The thing
We
that's
should,
causing us to suffer at this point is more so each other. It's
yeah,
not.
yeah. Well, if we just decide to evolve so we can
Get rid of.
social distance to the extreme.
And it's so funny because I think I said something to a friend about that too. I was kind of like, it's so funny. The people that, claim to hate you the most and don't want anything to do with you, they don't even want a social distance from you. That's how hate is so close to love. You know what I mean? You don't want to be away from me. You want to be where I
That's
am.
a interesting concept.
You don't want to be away from you. It's like a gimmick. Um, yeah, it's so funny. It's funny how human beings are not very self-aware, and how very few of us are very self-aware. I've realized that as I've gotten older, that I think I'm a little bit more of. I'll call myself like an extroverted introvert. I'm more introverted than extroverted. I
You're
think with
an ambivert.
yeah, in a way, because I'm a person that I can be extroverted when the situation calls for it, but I actually just need extra time to recharge my battery. So if I'm out for like 2-3 days, like really in the social mix, like I'm gonna need like 2 more weeks of like silence. Like I need to recharge.
I can relate. I can relate.
So I don't know. I think with the introvertedness, I feel like his I don't know. I think it made me more of a self-reflective person. I take a lot of time to reflect about situations. Sometimes it's not great because it makes you overthink and like gives you anxiety. But other times it's really great because I like to think I know myself really well. I know, how I feel about things. And I don't think a lot of people do that. It's really funny. I used to think like, well, everybody does this. But no, there's people that never really even stop to think about what it is that they're doing, or, I don't know. They just don't really self-reflect at all. It's crazy,
When
actually.
it comes to that, because I had a gentleman bring that up with me the other week, the importance of knowing yourself, recognizing the things that you're not okay with, and identifying and sticking to them. It's like if you don't like Pop Tarts, don't let someone sway you into eating Pop Tarts. Um, but
Oh,
would you say you, I guess, accomplished knowing yourself, and could you share your, I guess, the way that you accomplish that? Because I don't know. I think in some form or fashion, I still want to do that because there are just things I just don't care about. I don't know if it's just the way my mind is, but there are things where I'm just like, if it really doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. But yeah.
yeah. I definitely, I would say that I've reached a point of conquering that. And I think that it probably stemmed from my childhood. I had to do so much compromising. I grew up in a relatively big household, and with a lot of different types of people, different personalities, and I had to do so much compromising, in my young age for so many different things. And in doing that compromising, I was just kind of always, like, oh, like I don't want to do this, but now I'm being forced to do this, or I don't want to do this, but now I have to do this. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, the things that I actually wanted to do. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? When I have the more freedom to choose these things, I'm gonna choose them, and that's gonna be that. And so when I got a little bit older, I started becoming more that way. But still in my youth, like maybe 18, 19, 20, I was still kind of like what you said, like, okay, still working on establishing boundaries, because people can be really pushy and want to try to get you to do things that you don't want to do. And then after a while I was like, no. And I think it was just really through kind of seeing people that I admired, and their personalities, of those people that I admired were usually very strong people that stood their ground. And in admiring those people, I was kind of like, no, I want to be that person. So I kept working on it until the point where I was like, if anything is not working for me, it's not making me comfortable, I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it, because there's only so much time. I remember my grandfather used to say all the time, like, you only have one life to live. There's only so much
Mm.
time to have. And it's something that's always stuck in my mind, because I'm like, okay, well, if this is one life that I have to live, I'm not going to live it eating Pop Tarts when I don't want to eat Pop Tarts. And you're going to have to deal with it. Okay. And I started, actually, it got really bad in a way, almost when I was young, because I remember being in certain relationships, and I would end those relationships, and I did, want to know the reason why. I'm like, well, because I'm bored. And that answer was never good enough. It was always like, well, no, there has to be something else going on. Maybe there's another guy, or maybe there's, and I'm like, nope, nothing else. Perfectly fine. Just it's boring now. I'm not interested. And I would never. That was probably one of the first situations where I started establishing boundaries, or like holding my ground, because I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to make you feel better. I'm not going to tell you it's because of something else. I'm not going to tell you it's just having a bad time, or it's a bad time in my life. I'm going to tell you the truth, and you're going to have to deal with the rejection. No, it's just because flat out, no other reason, I'm bored. And that was like so liberating, and it kind of careened me on the path of like, okay, yeah, I'm establishing my boundaries. If I don't want to do something, you're going to get a no from me. And it's actually, once you do that for a while, it's so funny, because now when people who know me and people who get to know me, they realize very quickly, like, okay, like this is who she is, and they're always like, yeah, I like that about you. You know what I mean? They always immediately respect it. They're like, okay, great. Like, I know this is not a person that I can kind of, try to make them do something that they don't want to do. And usually people are so, respectful of that. And I've even have friends that are just like, oh, I wish I could be like that. I wish you could say no. I'm like, well, you could say no.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful way to think about it. And I really this journey that I'm on now is just discovering how I feel about things. And it's crazy because I take it down to these. Maybe I'm being extremely dramatic about it, but I take it down to like the finest things. I had a piece of paper. I started writing it down. I went, okay, so what matters to me? It started with, okay, I know that in order for things to matter for me, I need to have some form of good health. And so it's like, okay, so health, I guess that matters. And then it moved towards, well, you need your freedoms so you can do all this shit you want to do, and so you can know what matters to you. So okay, next is your freedoms. So you put down, all right, my freedoms, they matter. And then you start playing around those two things on the thing, and you go, okay, well, if you didn't have health, no, well, no, if you didn't have freedoms, you would sacrifice your health to obtain those freedoms. So I started with, okay, these two things are what matters. These two things are what matters. And like I've been just building on that and going and just little situations and deciding what matters to me. And what was another one? Um, I don't want to have to kill people. Like that's just something I don't want to have to do because people are
So
gonna
funny.
die anyway. It's
That's so funny. I'm so different from you.
well, it's like I've created limits. I've created limits because, for instance, say if you got some asshole who's just running around killing people and you can't figure out the reason why they're doing it, and you instead of just sending them in jail and put them in a cell, maybe you throw all this energy, and this is a fantasy where you throw all this energy in to get to the bottom of this rehab of why they're doing something, so that you could re-release them into the world again. And then I'm like, if they do something horrible that just patterns it after all that time and energy we just put into, if you do it again, then that's probably when you need to be killed. And it's crazy because I'm just being more. I don't know. It's just weird because that's how I feel about it. I don't want people to have to necessarily just die or be killed because you're gonna already do it.
That's
So
so
why?
funny. That's so funny. I'm so the opposite of you. It's
I need to
crazy.
know. I need to know what this is, why this is. Tell me, please, please. I need this perspective.
Well, actually, what I figured out in my life actually is the most important thing to me is freedom overall. Freedom to do whatever it is that I want to do whenever I want to do it. Like that's probably the most, important thing to me ever. And anyway, when it comes to people dying, it was so funny because I've gone through a lot of different phases. At first, I was very, pro capital punishment, and then at some point in time, I watched this documentary. I think it was like an Oprah Winfrey documentary that she did on a jail where they rehabilitated people. They had people on death row work in hospice of the jail, so like the jail, older jail, cell people that were in jail, they were dying and they were sick, and these inmates who are on death row that had kind of good behavior, they would put them in and have them help nurses take care of those people, kind of nurse those people,
Mm,
take care of them, people who are really dying alone because they've committed these atrocious crimes. They're all alone, they're old, they're sick. And through doing that for weeks and weeks, these people actually, they started out, they were stone cold, they were killers, whatever. And after weeks and weeks, months and months of taking care of these people that later, afterwards just die and they die alone, they started, at the end of the documentary, when they were talking about their crimes, they were like crying on camera, which they like, they showed footage of like how not remorseful they had been. And they started crying and they started to kind of really understand the human condition and what they'd done to, like, what the true, you know, feeling of what they'd done to other people, basically. And they started to really feel it through taking care of these people and
mm,
realizing, I don't know, I just growing some empathy. And so I changed my mind on capital punishment. And I also changed it because I felt like in a lot of studies, people are wrong. Court system is rigged. It's, I was pre-law, so I learned a lot about how much money, plays in that game, and how much, bias plays in that game too. So I feel like a lot of times people go down for things that they didn't do, or they, do an unfair amount of time. So I changed my stance. But then after that, I just completely went the other way. And I was like, you know what? No. I think if you do something, actually, no, you should die. I think that is,
Damn.
yeah, I think that's the ultimate, thing. You have the gift of life. You have your chances with what to do with it. If you choose to do things with it that are horrible, you know what? Eye for an eye. We're going all the way Old Testament. Kill you. Chop the head off. I don't want to rehab you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to figure out your psyche. You're like spoiled milk. It's not going to happen. Just cut it off. And that's where I am. Don't care who you are. Don't care. Just, you know what? Cut it off. We don't have to worry about it. And
But what about those cases where you have someone who does something and
not worth it?
It's not worth it? Damn.
I don't think it's worth it.
Damn.
Look,
Damn.
all this time, all these tax dollars, all this suffering you've caused, those people spent how many years on death row? The families of the people that they've killed, the lives that they influenced, knows no bounds, the generations of people that they've hurt. And okay, at the end you cry. Who gives a shit? You're done. You're done. You're done. You're done. Let's not play this little game. Like, no, I don't even know. Why?
But why are you against rehab? Is it because it costs too much? Is it because I guess just why are you against?
Why do you deserve it? To me, it's like, okay, look, whatever the situation was that caused you to be a horrible person, usually it goes back to, when we look at psychology, whatever, usually it goes back to the way that you raised. A lot of, or you were raised, and the conditions that you were raised, and a lot of things stem from that. And I think, what? People who raised you did a bad job with you. Okay, you're done. It's too bad. Game of life, you lose, you're done. I don't think like rehab, all these things, it takes a long time. You're right. It takes tax dollars. It takes a lot of other people suffering, and good people. And I think those kinds of things make people think more before they do something. I think when the punishment is more severe for what you're doing, you have more of like for instance, for a long time ago, very long time ago, probably back in the 1600s, divorce was like this unheard of thing. Really unheard of, okay? And people were so cautious and so like, I don't know, it was this big thing to get married. It's this huge thing. And, fast forward, obviously all of that's been done away with. It's not like this huge thing. It's not something, you can get divorced, whatever. It's not this big deal. But in the span of it not being this big deal, you're not like this major pariah. You're not like, this terrible person because you got divorced. Now we have all these divorced couples with kids, and all these children that are suffering, and all these generations of people that are suffering because of these two people that decided to get married so lightly, didn't think things through, and then they end up getting divorced. And then these people have lifelong grief, and like changes the way they think and changes the way they approach other people. And it's like this big mess, because the punishment wasn't severe enough in the beginning. I think it should just start out severe. You steal something, we cut off your hands. Not a lot of stealing. not a lot of stealing though, right? I mean, it's true. In those times, the people that stole you really knew were either completely terrible people, or people that literally were so dirt poor they had no other choice and they were willing to lose their hands. We can go with that, but when you start off with the punishment being that severe, it makes people think twice. And I think, punishments need to start to be more severe. We can't just play this game and keep playing this game. That's my stance on it. It's harsh, I know, but I think it's true.
Well, it's funny because I listen to it and I understand it, and I don't knock it because I get it. It's honestly, it kind of goes into the whole thing of, I guess, the play on radical and conservative, and I guess that's what it is. And
Yeah.
it's weird because I understand it, and it really, what happens there is you just get a choice and you start thinking, well, now you have to decide how you want to go about it. And
Yeah.
I
Imagine
guess
if there
I
was,
I
imagine if there's punishment for the parents. You know what I mean? Like, you know how those kids go out and they shoot up schools and they do all this stuff?
mhm.
Imagine if not only did the kid, get punished to the full extent of the law and get killed, but also their parents. Imagine how differently parents would approach that situation, knowing that if my kid decides to do this, like, we're all going down completely. That would change so many people's approach to parenting, like, and paying attention to their children and paying attention to those warning signs and paying attention to mental health. That would
Oh
change the
shit.
game
That sounds like North
completely.
Korea though.
Right, but it's a fine line, because I'm almost like, I think if you really had to box it in, I think, like, I'm radical conservative, like you said, and radical liberal. I think I'm both, because, while I, approach situations, and I was totally gonna vote for Bernie. um I agree with a lot of his ideals, but I'm also in the complete other sense, like, things need to start off with a little bit more severity, because that's what makes people listen at the end of the day. And that's what makes people who weren't going to pay attention, because, like, the people who were already going to pay attention to those types of things, it's not going to affect them really in any major way. But, like, the people who go around having kids willy-nilly just because it's like they think it's like a part of life, it's like a stepping stone of life, something that they get to do, and not really paying attention to how those kids are going to turn out as people, and paying attention to, like, what goes on with them and actually caring about it. That would change the game for those people, and I think that's where it's most important, you know um yeah.
I really I get it. It's um I guess one of the things I worry about with it is, where do we draw the line? What crimes don't cause you to lose, I don't know, something of your lifespan? Well, for instance, how would you approach the Harvey Weinstein? How would you approach the Harvey Weinstein? Would Harvey Weinstein be just off for his, because he's done some ferocious things to the women
Oh
in the
yeah.
the business. We know what Harvey Weinstein does, but like, what would be his case? Would it be
Him, his family, all those people,
oh
gone.
God,
Gone.
his you
Because
think his
now
but what if
it's
his family didn't have
pervasive.
anything to do with it?
Well, yeah, not really, because you know what? Here's the thing. Um, I remember having a friend who was, when he was a teenager, he was kind of like a very bad teen. He's in his phase where he was, like, rebelling and doing all these things and kind of getting involved with the streets and all this stuff. And but I had been friends with him before that, and I remember at the time, like, he started dating this girl, and he was like, yeah, I want to introduce you to this girl. And I was like, no, I don't really like her. And he's like, how do you not like her? You haven't met her. And I was like, yeah, but I met you and I know
Hmm.
you. And if she likes you, I already know something about her that I don't like. And he started
That,
laughing.
God dang.
To me, it's like, look, maybe you weren't involved in the sex trade and all that kind of stuff, but if this is the kind of person that you're married to all this time, you're telling me you didn't recognize any of these signs, and if that's the kind of person that you're attracted to, there's something there, that's just not right. And I think
Mm.
the ideals that he's had, the things that he's done, I mean, honestly, your kids are going to suffer anyway, and yeah, there's something there. Those things don't happen out of nowhere. Um so I think, yeah, forget it. Let's just not even deal with the whole generational thing. Let's not deal with your friends, everybody who was there with you. Goodbye. And
So
we don't have to talk about it.
I'm going to pull you back from your Gatling gun, because goddamn, um, I am. God dang, you were just trying to. What's that? That water from that community tastes kind of salty. I'm about to just obliterate all of them. God dog, no. Okay, so one scenario I want to play with you is the concept of, because back in my day, God, I feel old now. Back in my day, when we
What's
were
your
in
day?
school,
What's your day?
2011.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But back in school, when the student when the student what was it? When the student didn't go to school or they obtained
Truancy.
truancy court, they from skipping, they
Hmm.
would find the parents. They would find
Yeah,
the parents.
as they
Now,
should.
so what happens if you drop your kid off at the door, you escort them in to the classroom, but you can't be there with that child that entire day. And lunchtime comes around and they say, you know what? Guys, let's go get Pizza Hut. We can screw the rest of the day off. We don't need to do this. And it's not that the parent has maybe the parent's taking that kid home and they're beating this kid. They are taking the things that they love away to ensure that they're throwing discipline up the ass on this kid so that they don't go back to school and disobey them because they don't want to fine. They don't want to waste their time and have to go to court and deal with that crap. What if they're doing all they can to do that? If we live in a world where if a kid, just comparing it to, say, for some other heinous crime, where that punishment is the death of that kid and the death of that parent, I think there should be some lines drawn because
Well, I
it's
mean, in this world
individuals.
that I'm envisioning, those kinds of things, I don't think those are heinous. So I feel like it wouldn't be death, but I think it definitely would be a very high fine. I think it would be the kind of fine that would change lives of the kids and the parents in a very negative way.
And
I
kids are
think,
stupid.
kids are stupid, and they should realize very early on that there's big consequences for their actions, major consequences for their actions. This is not a free world. You go out there, you do terrible things, you do a bad job, you don't listen, you could lose your job. You could lose the place that you live. You could lose a lot of things, and you could sometimes even lose your life over stupid mistakes. So let's just teach you the lesson early on. You know, yeah, I dropped my kid out the door, and I'm throwing punishments. This kid is out of control. This kid's a bad seed, because if you have that level of parental, like, paying attention and involvement, and you're still off the rails enough to make that kind of dumb decision, even knowing within this world what the punishment for that is, you're off the rails. You're already off track, and we need to get you back on track by really just, pulling the plug here and saying, okay, charge 10,000 bucks, or we'll base it on your parents' income. The higher the income, we'll base it off of like that, and make it something that's just gonna really hit your finances hard.
Damn.
Now you're not gonna be screwing around, and if you do it again, we'll take you out of school completely. Now, what are your options? Now you're out. We don't have to worry about you skipping. You're out, and if you do and you commit any stupid crimes, you'll be in jail. If you commit anything heinous, you know what'll happen. So
So I
now
don't want
we've
to live in
really,
your world.
we really heightened
God.
like, the levels of this stuff. And I think in those types of, I would think in that type of society, that having known those things, and I'm sure there would be people that, are stupid enough to try the system. But seeing the examples of those things, I think would be enough to make the majority of people do the right thing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
you would know
wouldn't you
that.
say that's a world built on fear, though?
Yeah, I think it would be, I think, like, if you're gonna do bad things, it'll be built on fear, because I think in that world, if it's my world, um, like I said, I like the whole thing of radical liberalism as well, I guess you could say. And so I think there's a lot of benefits in that world and a lot of great things. But those great things are for good people and for people who are going to do the right thing. It's not going to be for people who are going to be doing stupid things all the time and think that, nothing is ever going to happen. And they keep going and keep going until it's just this terrible thing. No way. We'll get those people off the map as quickly as possible, and we won't play around with it. You know what I mean? I think that's great. I think, yes, it's fearful, but it's only fearful if you're doing stupid things. If
I
you're
know
not doing
people
stupid things, you
do
have
stupid things
endless
a lot.
opportunities. Yeah, yeah, I think, a lot of people do stupid things, but, you could say a lot of those people actually also come from places where they don't have a lot of opportunity. But
Hmm.
in this world, because you'll have more opportunity, now when you do the stupid thing, you're really stupid. So it's not going to be because, you know, you grew up in a community where you're ultra poor and you don't have access to this and that, and you're not well educated, because really now we have all these different things that are offered to you, that are offered to other people as well. And so you can't really go with those excuses anymore. So now you have to really just want to do the wrong thing.
Ooh, now I actually start thinking about because this other idea with that, you have a world built off of something like that, where if you're doing a heinous crime, you're just getting you're got. We're taking you out and we're just putting you on the chopping block. I think about instances where there was a wrongfully convicted person for rape because someone just was basically like, hey man, this person raped me, and they didn't do it. And they went to jail and they suffered in all that time period. In this world, the punishment for that kind of thing sounds like you would die.
Oh yeah,
What,
for sure.
but well, not the lying on someone,
No, no,
but
no. You're talking about the person that, you know, gets convicted. But for me,
yeah,
when it comes to sex crimes, for me, especially with rape, it's one of those things, again, at this, you know, this current world where it's completely rigged and it's completely messed up. It depends on how much money you have. It depends on, like, in which party has the money, right? So if the rapist has the money, they're getting off. If the, you know, the person who got raped has them, or says that they got raped, has the money, they're, you know, getting somebody else convicted. That's how it's kind of set up right now, just in general. It's based on your income, how much money you're paying, what fancy lawyer you can get, you know, how you're viewed, and all that kind of stuff. Even race, demographics, all that stuff comes into play because it's rigged. But in this particular world, you know, which is not perfect, but it still is what it is. It's one of those things where it's, no, we're not playing into that. If we don't have proof that you were raped, because it's, to me, rape gets really scientific. You know, it's really, yes, the whole thing is, because rape is tough. It's one of those, really, sex crimes are really tough, because I think the effect that it has on the individual is really tough. Because from what I've seen, from what I've studied, it's one of those things where you get raped, you don't want to talk about it. It makes you feel ashamed. It makes you feel less than. It makes you don't want to tell anybody about this horrible thing that happened to you, especially because nowadays people are just judgmental and they're mean and they're cruel. So then you don't want to talk about it. Then when you finally have the courage to open your mouth and speak, it's too late to get the scientific evidence to prove that you were raped. That's one of the biggest problems. And I think, you know, having the confidence to know that, look, when this happens, you're not going to be ridiculed immediately. When this happens, this guy, he's not going to just be sitting in jail for a little bit of time and get off. He gets out before, like, somebody who dealt like weed for a couple of months, you know, would get out. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be, this guy's going to die. So I think that would
you
give
think
people
that
more
you think people
courage.
you think people will be what's that, more humane and nice and care about who they're
No,
judging?
I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about the system in place. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because if you know, it's a difference if you get raped in this day and age, and you know that what's going to happen is you're going to be, first of all, questioned to the nines. What were you wearing? Where were you? Who are you? Are you sure? Was it really? You know, it's all this stuff. It's all this stuff trying to just, like, totally, you know, shame you. And even afterwards, if the person does get convicted, people are still like, yeah, but you ruined this, you know, person's career. They almost could have been, like, maybe like some kind of star. Like, it's terrible. But I feel like in that sort of world, it's like you'd have the confidence of knowing that if you do tell, when immediately when this happens, you know, and we do get this, you know, scientific proof that yes, you were raped, this person is going to die, and you're not going to be, you know, this pariah. This person is going to be dead. So I feel like that'll probably give more people, maybe not all people, but a lot more people, the confidence to come up and say, look, like, this happened. Because I think that's the biggest problem. I think that's what makes it so, like, ambiguous nowadays, is because people wait too long, and then when they accuse, it's like, is it true though? You know, and then it makes people who are going to falsely accuse, like, still able to slander you, because they don't need to have that necessarily tell on you on time. It's very tricky. Um,
It
but that's
is.
how it would be
And when a
handled.
world is that way, that's why I guess I choose the more conservative approach to give people more opportunities instead of accidentally offing someone, because
It
I
would
get
never
the
be accidental. I'll just put that out. It would never be accidental. If it's too late to get that scientific proof and you waited too long in that world that I'm, saying, that person wouldn't be convicted. They just wouldn't be. But you have two options there. When that happens to you, you have two options. You can either go ahead, say you got raped, and get the rape kit done, and so we have scientific proof that this person did this to you, so there's no argument and this person is going to die. Or you choose not to say anything, and then we're not going to allow you to sit there and slander, and you're also, that person is not going to get, is not going to have any punishment based on hearsay. It's just not going to happen. So you have really two hard choices. And I would, and I think most people, if that happened to them, would take the other road to say, look, this is what happened to me and I can prove it. And it is what it is. And we know we're not wrongfully
yeah,
convicting anybody. You know
I
what I
get where
mean?
you're coming from with it. My next question, I wonder, is how old are you, if you don't mind on sharing it?
29.
29. That surprises me. That surprises me because
Why?
because
You thought I was
my
older or younger?
I thought you were younger, because I honestly thought this would be an idea from someone younger, because I always had
No, I thought
the thought
that.
that as you moved in life, as you progressed, someone, I think actually an older guy said this to me. He's like 76 now. He said as you're younger, you tend to be more
More
radical.
liberal or more radical, yeah.
And as
This
you progress and get older, then you become a little bit more conservative, because you recognize all the different opportunities in life and all the different, it just seems like you become more, I don't know, you become more conservative. That's the lack of a better word. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I
no.
just, I think I probably what's wrong with the world is I think about, like, what other reasons that you could probably be obliterated, and I'm going, would I be safe in this world? And that's probably also the other
Like,
thought
give me an
process.
example. Like, throw an example.
So for me, I know from the experiences from, what's that? The what's that? Oh, good one. Dan Harmon. Dan Harmon has done some older skits that comedy is subjective, and he's done some skits that are kind of fucked up. They're kind of fucked up. He had one with a little, I think, I don't know if you saw, this was trending one time, but there was an old sketch he had, and he was playing around with the thought of, if there was a pedophile, well, that pedophile, what you would do is you would go back in time and you would pedophile that pedophile as his crime punishment. That would be the punishment for him. You would pedophile the pedophile in back in
So you
time.
would
Remember
just
something
be
on
a pedophile of it.
exactly, exactly. But it was kind of funny. Well, it was funny in a way, but it didn't. He acted it out. He actually acted it out with like a baby doll,
Mm-hmm.
and then so basically, with that being said, he would be canceled, or that's how people are handled, or
Canceling is not a law, though. I mean, can't people cancel based on, like,
people.
just
Yeah, it is
yeah,
decided by
people do
people.
that. Whatever. They don't want to listen to you. They don't want to see you. That's their problem. I mean, it's not like this, strict dictatorship. It's, you're still able to make comedy that might be offensive. That's why it's comedy. But and there would be no ban on any of those things. But I think what really, if we want to talk kind of TV, I guess, and like things like that, like what you're seeing, I think the only real restriction in this world would be that nobody would own, nobody with any uh well, maybe, yeah, nobody with any political affiliations and nobody with any corporate affiliations would be allowed to own a news station. So your news station can't be owned by a particular party, a particular corporation, a particular anything. The news has to remain unbiased. That would probably be the main restriction on anything that was like on TV, because that's such a big problem right now, and it was a problem in the past too before, and that's how a lot of things, a lot of dictators control things. That's how a lot of people control things, just through the media. And I think that would be a huge thing. You cannot, if you're the owner of a big corporation, if you are in any way politically inclined and part of a major political group or in a position like that, you're not allowed to own a news station. It's going to be people who went to school to do journalism. They work their way up, they own it as a business, but they're not allowed to take endorsements. They're not allowed to be paid and all that shit. And if they did that, then of course they would be punished for that. And of course, their news station wouldn't be allowed to like run. But we just would try to do things that would enforce unbiased news. And that would probably be the only thing. Everything else, I mean, offensive comedy, whatever, offensive art, it is what it is. People can choose to tune in, not tune in, cancel it, not cancel it. Yeah, whatever.
So, would you say freedom is subjective?
Freedom is subjective. No, I don't. I think freedom is pretty clear. Freedom is pretty clear. Freedom is across the board, complete purge. Do whatever you want. Hack the heads off of whoever. Freedom is most important to me in my life, to do whatever I wanted.
Oh, but it's the consequences. It's the and
Yeah.
the reason
It doesn't mean that
I
there's no
asked that is
consequences.
because that same person that can't own that news radio station,
Mhm.
that basically treads on their freedom. And
Nothing.
you
I
said,
think
does
what
it?
I think, because I think that, what, certain things can't, because freedom for me is really about the freedom to make the choice, right? So if
Okay.
I know I want to own a news station, and that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I want to do, and I know that if I own a news station, I cannot also own a major corporation, because um it's going to be a conflict of interest, obviously. Then I have a choice to make, but I have the freedom to make that choice. Nobody's holding a gun to my head. So I can do whatever I choose to do at whatever time I choose to do it. If I want to sell my corporation at some point and I no longer own it, and I want to go to school now for journalism and I want to own the news station, sure, you know,
Do you
but
think they
I
need
have
to
a
go to
choice.
school for it?
Absolutely. I think you definitely have to go to school to report the news. I think you need to learn about yellow journalism. You need to learn about what's biased, what's not biased. You need to kind of, learn the whole thing behind it. I went to school at first for journalism. I was in high school, I was in a journalism club, and I was really, really into it for a long time. And I actually went freshman year to college with the intention, like, my major was going to be journalism. But I was more so interested in investigative journalism. And then that kind of dropped off because there weren't a lot of like investigative journalists anymore. There's not many of them. There's most of their outlets has been disbanded, and it's like a pretty dangerous job. And
Hmm.
so, so that's what I kind of just segued into law. But yeah, I think you have to go. I think you need to learn the history of what you're doing. I think even people who are doing music should learn, to some degree, like the history. You need to learn some stuff about, the history of what you're doing, and be a little bit knowledgeable about it. Not just go off and do it. But
So I'm gonna stop you because, well, and now I say stop you, I'm not stopping you. I'm gonna interject. There we go.
yeah.
The point that I want to talk about is because, yes, learning more about a subject that you're interested in always helps you and enriches you.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that that should be the starting point for things, because I also think about that. Say, for instance, we took that world idea and we smacked that on to podcasting. If you have to do that before this, in some form of, or if you have to do that before you picked up that practice, you're kind of infringing on freedoms I know this is your world that you're creating, your pocket
I don't think for
universe.
everything. Don't get me wrong. I don't think, you have to go to school for everything. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying, if you're going to own a news outlet, a newspaper, or news TV, whatever you call it, TV show. If you're going to own a media outlet, big media outlet, magazine, newspaper, whatever it is, news network, you should have some working knowledge, because number one, it's a business anyway, and there are things that you need to know. And number two, there are restrictions right now, on how you can operate in news, what you can show, what you can't show, what's illegal to do, even, in terms of like what choices people have. I mean, you can't just say the names of like minors involved in things without getting permission first. You can't just, say things without saying they're alleged if you don't know that they're true. There's certain things that you're not going to know just because you're good at, like, investigating things. So I feel that there needs to be some degree of schooling. I think the type of schooling people do now, where they have 2 years of prerequisites that are kind of useless and just kind of sucking your money out, and then you finally get to the meat of the stuff, and it's so expensive. That's kind of crazy. But certain things require a certain level of knowledge, and owning a news thing, I think, is one of those things. Podcasting, not so much. You're just talking. Public radio, totally different. You do need to know some stuff. So I think it just depends on what it is, just like it is today.
it's 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 one of those things where I look at it and go, because you could be that average Joe that just started from building, and I know as you progress, there are new things you get introduced to. Because with this podcasting thing, say for instance you want to take this to another level and you form an LLC behind it, well, you have to
Hmm.
go do the research behind doing an LLC. And as far as schooling, I wonder on if there would be prerequisites, not prerequisites, if there would be a straight narrow path, or you could do like I do. I find out and do the research on a lot of things from different things. From There's videos, there's articles, there's experiences from others. I take all of that to get and gain my knowledge. I even go to the actual page where they're supposedly teaching something. I know that's vague, but I don't think that it should be a narrow path, meaning that you need to go
I
somewhere.
don't, yeah, I don't think that there should be a narrow path for everything, but I think some things do require a more strict path. And I think those things are when you are dealing with things that are now public. So public radio, public, TV outlets, newspapers, things like that. They are regulated on a federal level, and the reason why they're regulated is because to protect people,
Yeah,
because there's a certain level of responsibility there, right? Like, if you just trust every Joe Schmo there is to do the research themselves and say, okay, go off, and they do something crazy, it's already too late. People have already seen that crazy thing. And
and
at
you're right.
least, have a
That's
sense
why
of
they have
responsibility.
things that
Yeah.
come up, because you can't just go to Netflix and give them a series. They have to they have to vouch it and make sure it
Even
follows all the
though, have
regulation and
you
guidelines.
seen have you seen that recent, Netflix scandal with cuties? Have you heard about
I
cuties?
I kind of had to turn it
Yeah.
off. Well,
Yeah.
it's I understand where they're coming from with it or what they're trying to do, but just watching it, it feels weird.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
we
geared
turned it off.
towards, yeah,
We turned
it's
it off. It's the
uncomfy.
scene where they started dancing.
Yeah.
We just kind of had to turn it off because
And
it
there's
just.
more, it just gets more and more and more worse than that. So I yeah,
But I
that's
understand what they're coming
irresponsible.
from, because that idea, that concept, what they're trying to get, because once you up to that scene, you understand what this movie is about and you understand where it's going. It's basically saying the media we're putting out is affecting these children, and they are becoming, I can't think of what I want to say. They're being tainted from the children of yesterday. They are not the same children from yesterday. The fact that
Absolutely, but I
back in the
think
day, when you couldn't say, you couldn't curse on the radio, you couldn't get away with saying damn and ass like that. Now it's normalized. You can say those. You can't still drop an F bomb. You can't drop an S bomb. I don't even people call that an S bomb, but there are things that you can't say. You can get away with nowadays, and just the day is different than yesterday.
Yeah, but I think you can say that without a movie like Cuties. I think that movie was, in my opinion, super uncomfortable, super irresponsible. I think know that the actors are minors, okay? And that's already a situation for me. Is like, that's already irresponsible right there. You're saying one thing, if we're going to go along with that's truly the theme of it. You're
Mhm.
saying one thing and you're doing another in action, in execution of this movie. And then on top of that, people who can, most people, I'll say, 99% of people that can withstand watching that entire movie to from beginning to end, are they doing it for one of two reasons? Either doing it for commentary and research to say how disgusting it was, or because they enjoy it, and there's more people like that than there are people who are willing to watch it through to its entirety, because it's just not, it's just gross. So, and very, pedo. So I think that movie was like super irresponsible of them to take on. There's so many more ways that you can say that without executing it in that way. I think it's gross. I also thought the same thing about what was that movie called? It was like Last House on the Left, or
I've
it was
never heard
very
of this
like
one.
rapey movie. It was like most of the yeah, it's like the scary movie, not scary, I guess more like a thriller, but it was like a remake. So in the first film, a girl basically, she's on, I think her parents and her, they move out to this kind of secluded place. She's in a secluded little town, and basically there's this boy that works at a store. Her and her friend meet this kid. They go back to his motel room that he's staying in, and smoke weed with him, and everything is all fine. But his guardians are actually like big time
Mm.
criminals and rapists and like terrible people. And he didn't expect them to come back when they did, but they come back. And the girls are still there. So now these girls are in trouble. And these guys were like on the run, So like they're like, now we're gonna have to kill you. But not only are we gonna kill you, we're gonna like completely torture you. And like it's very rapey. And then the majority of that original movie, like the rape happens, the majority of the original movie was like the girl got away, and then her parents like got complete revenge on these guys. They like tortured these guys. And the whole most of the movie was like about them getting the guys back and like torturing these guys for what they did to the daughter. But the remake was completely different. The remake was focused on the rape, and the entire movie, to the last 10 minutes, was really just concentrated on like the rape over and over and over and over again.
Mm.
So everybody was like, that's kind of like rape porn. That's like a really, gross, irresponsible movie to show and make.
What's
And
it called again?
I think it's Last House on the Left, because there's two movies that kind of sound the same. Last House, let me look it up.
Because the first one
Yeah,
sounds
it is.
interesting, and the second one, it's a weird, it's weird. It's a weird area, and the funny part about it is online. Well, if you search on Pornhub, there's a category for that, and there's a thing for people. But it's
Yeah.
just it's weird. I don't know where the line gets drawn. I know
Well, you know
definitely.
what? The line gets drawn because you like, right. You have your freedom. You have your freedom to make the movie and do all those
Hmm.
things. But when it comes to the distribution of the movie, that's when it gets regulated, right? So if you're
Yeah.
making a movie like that, it's not going to be shown in every theater. Most theaters have regulations where they're not going to show certain movies like that. They didn't show Human Centipede. It was limited release.
Oh yeah.
So that's what happens. Like it depends who's going to pick it up, who's going to play it, how much circulation it gets. And that's the main difference. That's why people are like, oh, Netflix cancel it, it's irresponsible. It's about the circulation that gets regulated. So you can make the movie and it is what it is, but with the regulations in place, it's supposed to protect people, to where the people who, are sickos, they're going to find it anyway, whatever. But it's not going to be circulated to the masses like that. And when it gets put on Netflix, that's when we're in a situation where it gets circulated to the masses, and that's when people get upset because too many people are seeing that movie. You
I do
know?
wonder what their response to it is going to be, because I think someone responded and they said it doesn't it doesn't go out of their guidelines. But
Yeah, they're not gonna. They're gonna
public
stick to
opinion
it.
public opinion is always what reigns supreme, supposedly. So I wonder what's
They
going to
might
happen with
pull it.
that.
They might pull it, if enough people can't, because it's public opinion and it's really money. Everything is money at the end of the day. And if enough people say, okay, I'm canceling my subscription because of this, and their numbers start dropping, yeah, they'll
Mm,
pull it. They'll pull it. But if people are just chattering and then their numbers are not dropping, there's no real effect for them, they'll stand by what they said.
yep.
It's always just comes down to dollars and cents. That's what it is.
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately, but it's so sad because all the people that are in Netflix are human beings. They're not run by machines. And so you would try to think like a big group like that could put their heads together and say, yeah, maybe they have a point. And yeah, we can make money off of this, but at what cost? We made a lot of
right?
money. You know what I mean?
Because then it
So
turns into who's making that subscription just so they can watch this movie, basically.
exactly.
Basically.
Exactly.
But
Exactly. I
but
never wanted I
even
never
I will say on the flip side, if Netflix ever hears this, they probably should make a not okay, definitely make myself clear. It does not have cuties or anything like that on it, but they need to make an X-rated version of Netflix available for the
Yeah.
masses.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You know what? Yeah, maybe so. That's where you get into like there's access to that type of stuff on Pornhub, and that's where you get into like, well, if you're that kind of a person, you're gonna find it anyway, but it's not for the masses.
Yeah,
But yeah, that could be a thing, but I just think that they would probably get into even more hot water in doing that because it's like you know we are letting our children watch Netflix is a very popular thing. And the minute they make an X-rated category that children can potentially somehow trick access into whatever your young, adolescent boys and girls, they may rethink, Netflix. So I feel like that would be a really tricky move for them to make. But I get where you're coming from. It does make, some sense.
I get it. It's
Yeah.
it's a weird world, man. It's a
It's
weird
such a
world.
weird, it's really funny too. I think you were saying, earlier that what kids had access and like hearing and they're, different, whatever. It's so funny when you say that, thinking about my youth, because number one, I was, yes, it's so true. The radio was like a more restricted, things were more restricted. But it's so funny. I was listening to so much gangster rap in the 90s. It was insane. I was listening to all kinds of stuff. And then as well, my parents were like big like horror movie buffs. So like they loved horror movies. And I grew up watching so many horror movies like 5 years old and watching like Chucky murder people. Like I am watching every scary movie you can think of. I'm watching it. It could be a kids movie, it could be an adults movie. It doesn't matter. I was watching all those things, Jason, all that stuff. And scared, super scared, but watching it, loving it. So it's kind of funny to think about it this way too.
Well,
Um,
it's funny because
but
that thing with humans is it's like we want to see the things that are supposedly gonna bother us to see if we're gonna be able to watch it. I mean, because
it's
we heard the
thrilling. It's a
backlash with
thrill.
cuties, and
No, yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
hovered around it, and we said, "Do we want to sit through this crap? Do we want to do this?" And we said, "Fine, just turn it on. Why not?" And then you realize it's crazy that we put ourselves in these situations. It's the reason we get on roller coasters.
Yeah, it's well with cuties. I think cuties, to be fair, was more of a curiosity thing. I think when people are saying something so horrible, you kind of, you know, put it
Yeah,
on and regret it because you're just curious to see why they're saying it. But some things, like most scary movies that are going to scare you and make you have nightmares and like not want to sleep, those things are thrillers. You're absolutely right. I compare it to the roller coaster thing, like all the way. It's totally a thriller. I love those things. Just gives you like a jump, a little adrenaline.
what's your favorite horror flick? Because I always go through. I want to find something that actually scares me. I want something that really makes me go, you know what? I'm afraid. I'm terrified.
Okay, so it's hard to say. Okay, it's hard to say for horror movies was my favorite. I think what has scared me the most, the whole movie itself probably doesn't scare me, but The Exorcist, the classic Exorcist with her, face that she has, that movie is
Hmm.
very scary. I think in the horror genre, when you get into mixing religion with horror, I think that in particular is frightening because it's so you're mixing something that's so like sacred with something that's so heinous that it's insane. So I
Mm.
love those types of movies. They probably scare me more than the other ones. And as of recent, like if we want to go modern, I think the most things that are probably worth watching are like um the movies like The Conjuring, the movies like,
Yep, that's what I'm.
that's kind of
Those are
stuff.
dope.
Yeah. That, those movies are really good. I think those are some of the best movies that have come out in terms of horror in the last couple of years.
You know
But
what? That makes me remember actually what it is because most of the time when I watch these movies, I don't necessarily get scared. It's
mhm.
the suspense. That's what
Yeah.
I want to
Oh,
feel. I want to
yeah.
feel suspense. I want to.
Oh
There's
my
if it's not
gosh.
The Conjuring, it's is it The Nun? No, it is. It's
No,
not
no.
the.
It's what is it called? Per something. Dang.
Man, I know it's the same couple from The Conjuring because
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
they talk about it,
Man.
and there was a movie where it was Annabelle Origins. That movie did
Oh,
suspense.
Annabelle Origins. Okay.
They did the suspense in that movie so well. I felt
Insidious.
so bad
Insidious
for
is
that
another
chick.
one. Yeah.
Which one?
Insidious.
I haven't watched Insidious. Let me put that down.
You need to watch Insidious. Absolutely. They're made by the same people. And this came out before The Conjuring. It's very like, yeah, it'll creep you out. It will definitely creep you out. The whole thing, The Conjuring, The Nun, Annabelle, Insidious, all that kind of stuff is those are some of the best horror movies that have come out, in my opinion,
Now the Nun kind
recently.
of made me go because
It
they did that.
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't that scary.
They did that Marvel thing. They were trying to make that character in it really funny, and
Hmm.
it was bothering me. I don't want that in my horror movies.
No, I want to be scared 24/7. I want the Jason effect, right? So it's like I like when you're watching a horror movie. My favorite part of the horror movie is when like you see the woman that's just in her house talking on the phone, and you see Jason like coming, from the back door, and you're just like, please, no, and like, or when the people are like running for their lives and they suddenly trip, and they're not gonna make it, but you're still like, oh my god, like you're right there with them, like get up, just get up, and it's so funny. Those are the moments I live for in horror movies because now it's like you're with the character. You know what I mean? That's like the most I feel like that's the best moment. You're with the character. You feel like the same anticipation. You feel like something's going to happen to you. And you're just like, no, no, no. That's the best.
I that's what I so part of me wants to find something that actually I don't know. I want to be afraid of some things, and well, currently I am. I don't think bears. Just logically thinking about what a bear is and what it will do to you, that's
Have you watched
terrifying.
The Revenant? Have you watched The Revenant?
Yes, I have watched The
Oh, that
Revenant and
was
I
like
love
the
that
best
movie.
bear attack ever. That
Oh
scene,
yeah,
I think, was so accurate to what would happen if a
it
bear
it's
actually attacked
exactly
you.
what would happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
And wait,
probably die
and the
though,
worst
but
part, you would die. Yeah,
yeah.
the worst part is you would die.
Yeah. I mean, that
The-
was like really, yeah, that was intense. I think that he deserved the Oscar just for that portion, and whoever directed the movie, like that was insane. That was insane. Um, yeah, bears are terrifying. I think a lot of animals are terrifying. Um,
I think the only other thing that I found that kind of bothers me, or I don't necessarily, I'm not afraid of it, but it's one of those things I have to accept. Because I want to go skydiving because of this, but it's that whole thing of skydiving. When it comes to skydiving, pretty much at that point while you're doing it, you're flipping a coin here, and yes, it might land on the good side a lot more times than the bad, but while you're doing this, it pretty much goes one or two ways, and you can't do anything about it, and it's just
that's the thrill. That's the
yeah,
thrill.
yeah,
You know,
and I think I'm gonna actually go do
do
that.
it. Go ahead and do it. You don't have any kids, do you?
No, I'm just gonna wait till I
Jump
get to at
off.
least the 100th episode, so
Then
that
just
way at
jump off.
least I can at least have like, dang, That may,
You
yeah,
know,
that's what I'll do to celebrate
yeah,
maybe the
you know,
100 episode.
settle your affairs. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I got the podcast out of the way. If anything goes wrong, I'm good. And you just jump off, and it's amazing. I think it's amazing. I've been skydiving before. I think that moment where you're suspended between life and death, that's like a really exhilarating and undescribable moment that you'll never have in any other circumstance. Um, because it's really suspension between life and death, because you, like you said, you don't have any control, but you're completely conscious and there's nothing attacking you, which is because when something's attacking you and you're between life and death, I think your instincts kick in. So you're not like really choosing your actions. You're not really in the moment. But when it's like you're skydiving, it's just complete like suspension between life and death. Like whatever's going to happen is going to happen. You're just careening towards it, and it's insane. And I think it's worth it. You know, if you die, you die, but you know, it's pretty worth it.
I always said I look forward to it.
Yeah, you know, just go to a place where they do it a lot, obviously, and the instructors are reputable, and you're never going to do it the first time and be solo, which I think is more scary than anything. So you're going to do it tandem.
Yeah,
So you're pulling the parachute, which I was always worried about in the
you're chopping out.
past. I was like, oh, if it's up to me to pull it, I'm dead. Uh, so yeah. So you know, my next thing is bungee
And
jumping. I
I'm
want to do
trying not to
that,
be
but
afraid and say I'm
we'll
gonna throw
see.
another zero
We'll
on it and
see.
wait till the
The
1,000.
thrills are no, no. Do a 100th episode special. You gotta like, you know, turn it on, record it prior to jumping off, but then like leave it like, okay, I'm gonna go jump off, come back, and record the rest of the episode. You know, that's
I like that. I
like
like that.
part
I
two.
like
You
that.
know, if I don't come back, this is just gonna be part one.
That's great. I love it. I love it. You know
Yeah,
what? Thank you. Thank you.
yeah,
That's the best way to end or continue this. That's how.
yeah.
There we go. I got to hold to it now, but I'm
That's
not going to
now
confirm.
you're thrilling your audience. You know, now the audience is thrilled. Like, oh man, this guy didn't post. I don't know if he's still
Oh man, I am now terrified.
around. Yeah. Well,
If I
you know,
continue the podcast, it's going to be either my death or.
yeah, yeah. It's gonna be post mortem, or I don't know. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
that's
it's
hilarious.
fun. It's fun. Trust me, it's fun. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, you do it. I think that's an amazing thing to do. I think it's worth it. So, yeah. And honestly, if you do it this year, I mean, it's 2020. Whatever. I mean,
Right? I get to stop in the middle of the well,
yeah, like
actually
you
the
get off
way
the
that
ride.
this what's that the way that this thing is flowing though, because I'm been noticing with podcasting, especially when you're just doing it in a fashion where you're talking to people and just interviewing other people. uh it it, it doesn't you don't stack up numbers like that, and there's a good chance my 100th episode won't happen till the summer of next year probably.
Okay. Okay. Well, you
But
know what? Things could get a lot worse by next year. So.
what's this 2020 is really 2019's, and
Yeah.
2021 could be 2019's.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I think, you know, I was talking to my sister not too long ago, and I was like, well, you know, let's think about some worse things that are going to happen. This virus can mutate, or the vaccine comes out, but there's something wrong with it, but they rushed it. So now everybody took it. Now we're in my favorite situation, which is the zombie apocalypse situation.
I play around with that so
Love
much.
that situation. That's like a millennial thing to do, I feel. Like,
It is. It
like we're
is.
just
I
so
don't know why,
stressed.
because
We're
the
just
apocalypse
so
was gonna
stressed.
suck.
Oh
It's
my
gonna the
gosh. It would
apocalypse is
be
gonna suck so
terrible. It
bad.
would be terrible. Like, are you kidding? If people were really, you know, becoming undead and trying to eat each other, it would actually be the worst. And you know what really showed it to me, actually? When I was
What?
watching a lot of those shows, like Walking Dead, things like that, it seemed almost unbelievable to me how quickly, you know, like things got out of hand, like society completely dissipated, where, you know, all now everybody from the army's dead, National Guard's dead, everybody's so, you know, gone so fast. It just seemed unrealistic. But when the beginning of COVID hit its peak and stuff, people were really scared. Even the internet started going. You remember that? Like
Yep.
people, like everything started, and it was like so crazy, like how this just little thing, not little thing, pretty big thing, but still, like it completely started to like tank things, and it was really scary. And yeah, so now I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty accurate. If there was a zombie apocalypse, things would get really bad really fast. Like it wouldn't
Yep.
just be, like you're just kind of cool for a while. No way. And I would be completely screwed. So I don't even know why I like the
What would your first action be? Because I'll share mine with you first. So
Okay.
I've decided that if a zombie apocalypse happens, the first place I'm rushing to is the nearest Brahms, the nearest place with ice cream, because that's gonna not exist. Ice cream is just the concept of ice cream is no one's gonna make the time to fucking make ice cream anymore. So
Right.
that's where I'm going. If I'm gonna die, I wanna be eating some ice cream. Zombie comes up and I'm like, hey, bro, do what you gotta do, but let me finish this bowl of ice cream real quick. And
Yeah.
that's how I wanna go out. That's
you
how I wanna
realize
go
you'd
out.
be you realize you'd be eaten alive.
Hey, the beauty about ice cream though is if you're in pain, ice cream still feels good.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, you know what? At least you have a good attitude about it. I think that's good. I think that's better than trying to survive, honestly. I think trying to survive is pretty scary. I think my first action, honestly, I'm like, okay, let's just say it's happening outside right now. I'd probably try to think about ways to stronghold somewhere to like board up. I think like that would be my first action, you know. Probably not necessarily where I am, but I would find somewhere where there was a couple more people, and I would board the place up and kind of remain in for a while,
Hmm.
and then before going out, because I would just kind of let the chaos descend and like people start going insane outside, but I'd board the place up. I think getting in first is like key, and then as time goes on, you're gathering supplies, you have these people around you. I would rather be with a group of strangers,
Hmm.
100%. I don't want to be with any friends, and I don't want to be with any family, because if I have to kill someone, you already know what I'm going to do.
Oh God. Oh God. I just remembered. I remembered the world. I don't want to come across your party. I do not want to come across your party.
I'm kidding.
God.
I'm kidding.
God.
I'm kidding.
Just eat my damn ice cream in peace.
Oh man. No, I'm kidding. But no, I think that's a better way to do it. I do think that's because you know what? When you're worrying about friends and family, I think it makes it really hard. I think every zombie thing that I've seen, or people were around their friends and families, they were just starting to make really dumb decisions, you know,
They do. They
and
do.
everybody, all members were like making dumb decisions. So I feel like it's better not to be around your friends and family and just kind of band together with people that you don't necessarily know, because then it's kind of like now everybody's thinking logically, we're not thinking emotionally, and that's exactly what you need at a time like that. You need to start to think logically. Yeah. And I would try to get any weapon I could. It's really funny because I've been saying for a while now that I want to go. I've
Do
never
it.
shot a gun in my lifetime. That's like a bucket list thing. So I wanted to go. Yeah, I want to go to the gun range. You're in
I
Texas, so I'm
have.
assuming that you have. I'm just
There's
making an
I
assumption
have
that
a
you have
weird
shot a
thing
gun.
about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in
So
Texas. I mean, it's funny because it's not true when I say this, but it is kind of true. If you're in Texas, there's a really good chance you've already shot a gun.
yeah, for one reason or another. And I think that's cool because I think you guys are probably one of the states that are more prepared for something like that. You know what I mean? Everybody's already kind of got access. Everybody knows where to get them. Everybody knows how to use them, versus a place where people don't necessarily they're not necessarily familiar with it and don't know how to use it. So even if you did have a gun, you wouldn't be successful with it. So I've been wanting to go to a gun range and do some shooting, let off some steam. So I think 2020 is the year to do it. Maybe I'll just
I
book
encourage
myself,
it. You should
go
learn.
with some friends, go to the gun range. Yeah, I should learn. I just don't, I don't want to. I'm like I don't know. I don't want to get. I think it would be a thrill for me. It's another thing that would be a thrill for me, and I like thrilling things. And I hopefully don't want, I think I've been hesitant because I don't want to get so much into it that I'm like, I'm going to buy one. Because I also don't trust myself to
Mm,
have one.
mm.
Because I just feel like once you have one, you know, I don't know. I almost feel like it's just, it becomes a thing. You know what I mean? Like I have one. So if I do feel like somebody's coming in here, you
I
know,
feel
I
that
don't
that's
know. I
why
don't want to,
it's good to have a healthy fear about it, because
yeah.
that's the area that I'm with it. My first time picking up a gun and actually firing it was I was reminded, it's like
Yeah.
this is that thing that ruins, well, this is that thing that stops lives, man.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's one of those things. Now I want to learn more about it so I can understand more about it, because mastery is one other way to stomach any kind of fear,
Here. Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
so you can understand it better and get the healthy fear you're supposed to have. But yeah, that's kind of, it's like this for me. It's like, in this world we're surrounded by fucking water, you need to know how to swim. In this
Yeah.
world you're surrounded by guns, you need to know how to use one.
Yeah. That's true. It's absolutely true. So
Fun
I need
fact,
to,
I also
yeah.
keep a sword.
Well, yeah, I have a machete. I have a machete, so that's something that would be helpful to me if, you know, mass chaos broke out and there was a zombie apocalypse. However, I don't really want to have to use a machete because that already means that I'm too close to a zombie.
That's just
You
badass
know?
points. Come on, you got to still be stylish in this shit. That's why I got the
Yeah.
sword. This so I can just, be stylish with it. No.
Have you watched The Walking Dead? Do you like that show?
I've watched The Walking Dead. I watched it up until Negan, because
Yeah,
after that,
Negan sucks. Negan sucks. He ruins the show. It's a shame because I love his actor. Morgan. What is his name? What is his name?
Batman's daddy.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know his name. I don't know his name.
Yeah, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's a great actor, and I enjoy him, but I just don't like the character Negan. Oh, it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I don't like the character Negan because he ruins the show. He really does ruin the show. What really ruins the show? I hope I'm not spoiling anything for you.
Nah,
What?
I've already, the comics are, if you really want to enjoy it, I'd suggest the comics.
Yeah, I've read the comics. But he bashes Glenn's head in, and I think in the course of the show, Glenn is like this pivotal character for me because he's so he's like, I don't know, there's something about him that he was kind of like the heart of the show. He was like the heartbeat of the show. And
Yeah.
once like and the timing was wrong too, because I remember watching that premiere, right? So they were teasing us with the premiere of like who they were gonna kill. And that's when I stopped watching the show because they teased that they were gonna kill Glenn. Like they did a teaser, like they made it seem like he died in a very stupid way. Like some guy they're sitting on top of a garbage can, and this guy was an asshole to Glenn, and Glenn like helped save his life when the guy already had tried to kill
I
Glenn.
remember that shit.
Yeah, then he falls and they fake his death, whatever, and everybody's devastated. Then it comes back, oh, he wasn't really dead, and everyone's like, wow, that was an insane, mean thing to do to your audience. And then they start teasing like, you know, the death. You're like, okay, it's not gonna be Glenn because you already faked this out with him. You're not gonna do that again. That's
And
insane.
then
That
they
would be
faked us out.
crazy.
Nah.
Yeah, no, and then they kill him. So it's like you teased, you like made it seem like you killed him. Then you said, oh, I didn't kill him. Then you bashed his brains in.
Well, you got to
um
remember that I will say that was for me, I enjoyed the fuck out of that,
No, no
because
way, no way. That was
because
awful. I remember Trump just got elected. Look, it was a bad time. Trump just got elected. It was like chaos outside. You know, racists were coming out to play. The only escape you had, Walking Dead. You turn it on, and Glenn's getting his head bashed in. Forget it. Forget it. You know.
well,
Yeah,
because they
that was
also
horrible.
not slid. I don't know why I would say slid. They also offed Abraham, and that was a big deal for me too.
Whatever. We could live with Abraham dying.
Well,
Okay.
because but they
I
tried to fake us out with that. They
Yeah,
tried
they
to
tried
fake
to
us
fake
out
us
with that.
out, which is like, you know, come on, like, you know, you're gonna kill Abe. Like, I what I thought about, because I write a lot. You know, I write a lot. That's just something that I'm passionate about doing. I write a lot of
Hmm.
fiction, and I think one of, you know, the things that I learned through writing was you don't want to kind of do something like that, kill a character just to, shock the
Fake out.
audience. Yeah. Like, you don't want to do anything just to shock the audience. Everything that you do should be to the advantage of the story, not to shock the audience. Because then it just cheapens the whole thing. And I think that's what they did with Glenn. You did that for shock value, and it was cruel. I felt betrayed by the show. I'm dramatic, but I felt betrayed by the show. I was like, this is like really cruel of you guys to, like, to tell us he died, then tell us if he didn't die, then tell,
that was the part.
in.
That's the part that was kind of bothersome about that. The whole fake out or faking his death prior to and then doing that.
Yeah.
That was trash. I feel like that was trash.
That was mean. That was terrible.
The purpose that I did like, especially in the comics, when you know that that's happening and that they actually do it, it just shows the severity of Negan, and that's why I thought Negan was really finna come in this game and just switch it up and make it this really epic. We were gonna get this really good ride, because where they were in that, what's that, Alexandria, it was getting whack for me.
Yeah.
But when they brought in Negan,
Rick went absolutely crazy, though. I'm not gonna lie. That was one of my favorite parts of Alexandria, was when remember that woman was getting abused by her husband, and Rick just went absolutely crazy, beat the shit out of him, like dragged the zombie into the center of the group and was like, this is what you guys are not understanding about our group, like, you don't know anything. He just went batshit insane, and it was like, I loved Alexandria because what it demonstrated was the PTSD that the group had. Like, it was
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
If things go back to normal, like if things were just like went back to normal, that group would like need serious help. Like, they were so traumatized. Like, they were so fucked up. Like, it was actually insane to like watch Rick and like see what he was doing in the town, and watch how everyone moved and like how they were so suspicious. Even Daryl, who was like, oh no, I'm not even gonna sleep inside the house, like this is weird for me, I'm not gonna, you know what I mean, like this is not how I live. It was really funny to watch and really interesting, because I'm like, yeah, you don't really take in the PTSD until you have a normal situation, And I'll also say one of my favorite scenes was when Lori died. That was really good. Really good.
I don't remember Lori. I do not remember
that
who
was
the
Rick's,
hell Lori
that
was.
was Rick's wife. Remember when
Oh
she
yeah,
died?
no. Yes, that was
yeah.
That was tough.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was tough.
When he's like, where is she? And nobody answered, and he just like totally broke down. That was insane. That whole sequence was insane.
But the memes were hilarious.
Yeah, Carl.
Carl. Oh, that was hilarious. And that again brings me back to it. Memes are the culture, and memes will probably be the thing we build society on in the future.
Memes cure depression. Memes definitely cure depression. I found I really have a dark sense of humor, and it was so funny, for me, like the best thing about memes is like to see how many other people have a dark sense of humor, because I think so many memes are like so funny because they're so like messed up. Like, you know what I mean?
I like that kind of stuff.
They're kind of, I love that stuff. That's like, it's like so good, yeah, I love meme culture. But yeah, that show's interesting. The scariest scene of Walking Dead when I first started watching it was season 2, when everybody's like, standing around trying to get water on the highway and stuff, and then that horde comes for the first time.
That's cool. That was a tough one too. I enjoyed that. Man, Walking Dead was great up until
it was.
Honestly, after we got rid of the governor, that for me it kind of just went, yeah. But what really killed the show for me is how they began to start dragging things out. That's just what I couldn't watch it at that point.
They kept waiting to give us either like the first episode or the season finale, and everything in between was filler, and it was so annoying. It was like, I'm not watching, your 15, 16 episode season just to get like only the season finale be like this big thing, or like the premiere of every season to be the big thing. I want to have like actual good episodes in the middle, like the meat and bones of the show. And they keep giving you filler, and it's like, dude, do you guys even know how to write? I mean, come on. This is like,
Did you
there's so
guys
much
not watch Game of Thrones? No.
yeah, there's so much. But there's so much you could do in that world. There's no limits. It's like, it was crazy to watch and see like they're just putting filler. I'm like, this is the laziest shit I've ever seen. You know?
I I gotta stop because like I'm really enjoying this conversation, but we're past the 2 hour mark,
Oh
and
yeah, we
and
definitely.
and this is about to turn into the longest episode I got. So
You're welcome. You are welcome.
hey, I bow down and applaud, and I say thank you for taking the time out. Let me drop the bot, and I'm gonna ask you a couple questions.
Okay.